Chapter 324, The Cutting Edge of the Black Lands. Meng Hao sat cross-legged in his cave, fingers pushed against the ground, eyes closed. His spiritual sense merged with the mountain's demonic qi. The range was greater, and he could form a stronger incarnation. Luo Chang and the woman were directly in his field of vision. The world rippled, air and land blurred as if another location. Luo Chang and the four were rippling, blurry. The beautiful woman, when her butterfly activated, became crystal clear. Meng Hao looked at her and she looked back. To her, he didn't appear as a person but a blurry mountain. The mountain wasn't high but emanated majestic, vigorous will exerting pressure that made her face flicker. Demon, her eyes flashed, pupils constricting. Sir, I am Dual Land from the western desert. I have no intention of offending you, demon lord. Her voice was soft and filled with fear. Meng Hao didn't respond, looking at her closely, especially the totem. The mountain's image faded from her vision, disappearing. Her body shook, eyes shining. She breathed heavily, her chest rising and falling, catching Luo Chang's attention. Goddess Dual Land, he said, surprised. What happened? Her face was pale. The four behind them noticed too. Nothing, she replied with a smile, quickly recovering. Fear still lingered in her eyes. Back in the cave, Meng Hao opened his eyes, glittering brightly, lifting his hand to look at his two fingers. This is the first time I've entered this state and then seen the power of totems. It seems as if they have something to do with demons. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. In the past, he had done a bit of research regarding totem variations, but had never been able to determine anything definitive. However, the woman just now had been using totemic power and had been able to sense him. Furthermore, he sensed demonic qi coming from her totem tattoo. Interesting, he thought, closing his eyes again. Not much time passed before Luo Chang, Dual Land, and the four others neared Meng Hao's group of cultivators. Their approach caused the cultivators in the area to look up toward them. As soon as they saw the golden mask worn by Luo Chang and the two green-robed cultivators behind him, as well as the western desert cultivators, their faces immediately filled with awe and veneration. In the Black Lands there were two great powers, sort of like empires. One was the Black Lands Palace, the other was the United Nine. The United Nine was a group of allied cities controlled by different cultivator clans. Of the two, however, the Black Lands Palace was the most frightening. Its cultivators wore masks, the colors of which indicated the level of their cultivation base. Azure masks represented core formation, silver masks represented nascent soul, gold masks represented Tao children. The Black Lands Palace ruled by force in the Black Lands. It was referred to as the #1 power and was known to have the support of the Western Desert. Because of that, even the sects of the Southern Domain feared the Black Lands Palace. A Tao child from the Black Lands Palace was like a chosen of the heavens. One word from him could determine life or death for these cultivators. He was the heavens, they were nothing but bugs. The parrot tilted its head up, looking with contempt at the group flying through the sky. Next to it, the meat jelly had a solemn look on its face. These people are immoral, it muttered. They are just too wicked. Up in midair, Luo Chang's gaze swept over the group, and he suddenly let out a cold snort. The sound of it fell upon the group of cultivators. It felt like the fury of an emperor, causing all of them to silently lower their heads and kowtow. Seeing this caused a pleased expression to fill Luo Chang's eyes. He looked over at the incredibly beautiful Dual Land. Goddess Dual Land, what exactly are you looking for? He said with a smile. We have a bunch of backwater cultivators here. I can make them go looking for whatever it is you need. Based on his words, he obviously really did view the cultivators down below as nothing more than insects. Dual Land's pretty brow furrowed slightly, and she hesitated. She thought about the place she wished to locate, and it was true. Having people familiar with the area would be of help. Just when she was about to nod in agreement, her eyes suddenly narrowed. She had just seen that in the middle of the location occupied by the cultivators was a small mountain. At first glance, the mountain seemed strange to her. At second glance, she felt a peculiar sensation that made her think back to the demon she had just seen. Luo Chang happened to see her looking over at the mountain. He glanced at it passingly before his gaze came to fall on the medicinal cistern. As soon as he saw it, his eyes narrowed, and he shot forward through the groups of people to land directly next to it. He scooped up some water and sampled it, after which his eyes shined brightly. This is a natural medicinal elixir cistern. The quality is amazing, the highest quality. He laughed heartily, ignoring the incensed expressions of the surrounding cultivators. He waved his right hand, within which appeared a jade bottle that he prepared to fill with the medicinal cistern. If I procure some of the medicinal stones from this area, he thought, I can take this cistern back with me and put in the palace. It seemed that escorting this beautiful woman was going to pay off for him after all. In the blink of an eye, the bottle shot out into the air. The cistern water began to gurgle and then shoot toward the bottle. The more than 100 cultivators in the area were growing more and more furious. It was hard to say who was first, but they all stood up in quick succession, their eyes shining with hatred. Black Land's cultivators are inherently a cruel and savage lot, and to see someone so brazenly steal their cultivation resources caused their veneration to turn into frenzy. However, in the exact instant in which all of the cultivators stood up en masse, one of the mid-core formation cultivators floating up in midair gave off a cold snort. The sound transformed into something like rolling thunder which swept across the ground, causing the faces of the other cultivators to instantly go pale. Some of them even coughed up blood. "You people sure are brazen," said Luo Chang with a cold laugh. "I'm a Dao child and I've taken a liking to this medicinal cistern. That's good luck for the cistern as well as you. If I didn't need you to help Goddess Dual Lan, then based on your actions just now, I would have a mind to exterminate the lot of you." As soon as the words left his mouth, a calm voice echoed out from within the small mountain. "They may be brazen, but your temper takes the cake." The suddenness of the voice caused Luo Chang to immediately turn, a look of concentration in his eyes. The two Black Land's azure-masked cultivators from up above shot down to appear on either side of him, their eyes flashing. They had already scanned the mountain with spiritual sense, but hadn't detected anyone within. This unexpected voice immediately filled them with fear. As Meng Hao's voice echoed out, he reached down and touched the ground with one finger. The ground shook, and vast quantities of demonic qi tendrils rose up from the ground. They emanated out from the mountain and began to congeal at its peak. No one could see this qi, not even Luo Chang and his companions. The only thing they could sense was a crushing feeling of danger. The two Western Desert cultivators, on the other hand, as well as Dual Lan, could clearly see it. Their faces flickered as the huge amount of qi began to take the shape of a phantom figure. The phantom figure seemed to be draped with a black robe. His features were indistinguishable, but as he stood there, he seemed to be fused with the mountain, as if he were the mountain and the mountain was him. Dual Lan was experiencing the exact same feeling she had from moments ago. She looked around and realized that the more than 100 local cultivators all had looks of respect on their faces. They were not kowtowing to the short mountain, but the sight in front of her reminded her of what you might see in a tribe of the Western Desert. Such tribe members were constantly prostrating themselves to the most powerful totems in the tribe. That was how they acquired totemic power. What she was seeing here was the early stages of such an arrangement. Suddenly, the black phantom atop the short mountain flickered, gathering together the demonic qi in the area and shooting toward Luo Chang and the other two people with him. Though they couldn't see it, they could feel the danger and retreated in shock. However, the speed of their retreat could not compare to the quickness of the black phantom. Just when they were about to collide, Dual Lan's face twisted. She could not allow the Dao child of the Black Land's palace to die right in front of her. That would most certainly affect her prestige. She lifted her right hand and then waved a finger. The butterfly on her forehead flew out, speeding directly toward Luo Chang and the others. At the same time, the two Western Desert cultivators let out gruff roars. A giant bear totem coalesced, snarling as it charged forward. After that was a giant elephant, which also barreled ahead. In the blink of an eye, the phantom Meng Hao had created with the art of righteous bestowal was now racing to attack 6 individuals at the same time. An explosion rippled out. Meng Hao's demonic qi phantom shook and then dissolved. Blood sprayed from Luo Chang's mouth. The faces of the two azure-masked cultivators went pale. One of them grabbed Luo Chang and shot backward. The two Western Desert cultivators howled as they retreated backward several paces. As for Dual Lan, her face flushed red briefly before returning to normal. "Your Excellency, Demon Lord, we're here today." She actually felt a bit relieved, and was about to offer words of mediation when suddenly a cold snort echoed out from within the short mountain. "My incarnation is a bit weak," said Meng Hao lightly. The black qi around him covered his body, which suddenly flashed, speeding out of the immortal's cave like a black smoke. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the bear totem Western Desert cultivator. He raised his right hand, the one covered in the diaphanous glove, and formed a fist, which then descended down toward his opponent. Chapter 325, Tribulation Transcending Miraculous Life Form. Boom, the fist descended on the bear totem cultivator. The giant bear shook violently and shattered. The man's body caved in. Blood sprayed from his mouth in spurts as he was hurled backward several hundred meters. He ground to a halt, coughed blood, and sagged, covered in it. His complexion aged suddenly. He changed from middle-aged to ancient, hair gray, skin wrinkled, eyes listless. Most terrifying, the 3 totem tattoos faded and disappeared. A tiny phantom bear floated above Meng Hao's hand, shrieking. Meng Hao wasn't finished. In a breath, he took a step and lashed out with 3 more strikes. The first struck the elephant totem cultivator. Blood showered from his mouth as he tumbled backward 50 meters, groaning. He aged rapidly, his life force dissipated, his totems faded. A bear and elephant now circled Meng Hao's hand. His second punch slammed into one cultivator's chest. Crunching echoed, the man screaming. His mask shattered, blood shooting from his mouth. He flew backward 50 meters, his body aged, cultivation base seeming to collapse. The third struck the other. His cultivation was weaker. He just entered early core formation with unstable core. Meng Hao's strike sent him back 35 meters. His scalp went numb as terrifying power surged through, destroying everything. His core shattered, his body exploding into blood and gore. All happened in a blink. Meng Hao was in front of Luo Chang, his gloved hand shooting out, latching onto his neck and lifting him. Behind his mask, Luo Chang's eyes shone with fear and astonishment. His body trembled, panting raggedly. He didn't dare struggle. He sensed intense killing intent. Its denseness caused his mind to reel. Seeing his intent, Duo Lan's face paled. "Great Demon Lord, please listen. We harbor no ill intentions. What happened was a misunderstanding. I beg you to forgive our hot-headedness. We didn't know this was your territory. Please stay your hand. We will provide compensation." "Great Demon Lord," Luo Chang gushed, "this is all a misunderstanding. Really." He felt like he had one foot in the grave, the feeling he'd had facing Fang Mu, about whom he still had nightmares. That was the first time. Now was the second, even more intense. All his arrogance had disintegrated. "Misunderstanding." Meng Hao's voice was hoarse. His left hand pulled out a pill from his robe, shoving it into Luo Chang's mouth, then sent one toward Duo Lan. "Consume that pill," he said, "and we can consider this a misunderstanding." Luo Chang's eyes flickered with more fear. He wasn't sure what he'd consumed but could imagine. He'd have to wait until getting back to the palace to dispel it. Duo Lan's face flickered as she hesitated. She didn't care if Luo Chang lived or died, but not consuming would be worse. Gritting her teeth, she lifted the pill and swallowed it, looking at Meng Hao. He loosened his hand, flicked his sleeve, and turned back toward the mountain. With an imperious expression, he said, "Get the hell out of here. If you enter 300 kilometers in any direction, the poison kills you. No alchemist can neutralize my demonic pills." He disappeared into the cave. Luo Chang, Duo Lan, and the others hesitated only briefly before disappearing. About 100 kilometers away, they stopped and looked back. "Damn it, once I get back to the palace, I'll dispatch people to wipe it out," said Luo Chang, dangerous. "I'll take care of it," said an old cultivator through clenched jaw. "Let's see what he can do. I'll—" Before finishing, a single word rang out. "Bestow." The instant it echoed, the cultivator trembled. Luo Chang watched in astonishment as a pulsating black aura emerged from his ears, eyes, nose, and mouth. A massive aura spread from him. Duo Lan could see a phantom above his head, Meng Hao's righteous bestowal demonic incarnation. The blurry incarnation burrowed in through the top of his head. The cultivator screamed, his right arm quivering. His arm suddenly struck his own forehead. A boom echoed as his head exploded, killing him instantly. "Take care of yourselves," Meng Hao said before disappearing. Everything was silent. Luo Chang's body shook, and he abandoned all thoughts. He would never come within 300 kilometers again. Duo Lan panted, eyes wide. She'd seen demon lords in the western desert, but none were as bizarrely frightening. What if it was turned into a totem? Her heart beat faster. The remaining 4 shot off into the distance. Outside the cave, Luo Chang's retreat filled more than 100 cultivators with fanaticism. They worshipped the powerful, and Meng Hao's power left them reeling. "Did you see that?" squawked the parrot, flying up. Its eyes passed over them. "That was Lord Fifth's celestial magic. Practice according to my methods and you'll be just as powerful." Back in the cave, Meng Hao looked at his right hand, eyes filling with mysterious glow. "This right hand with my cultivation base and demonic chi can exterminate mid-core formation. For late core formation, I must use the blood immortal mask. Considering I'm at peak early core formation, few core formation cultivators match me. Once I achieve perfect gold core and mid-core formation, a cultivator who could match me would be rare. His eyes gleamed with confidence. The difference between his foundation establishment power and now was vast. Getting the last ingredient won't be hard, but the heavenly tribulation after the perfect gold core, that will be a problem. He frowned. The foundation establishment tribulation had been terrifying. If the blood immortal legacy hadn't helped, he wouldn't have formed the perfect foundation. Muttering, his eyes glittered as he sent spiritual sense out with a message. Moments later, flapping sounds echoed as the parrot flew in, looking impatient. "What's going on?" it said. "Don't you know Lord Fifth is training cultivators? Don't you know how precious his time is? How do I transcend heavenly tribulation?" Meng Hao asked directly. Heavenly tribulation? The parrot stared in shock, circling Meng Hao to size him up. Finally, it clucked and shook its head, sighing. "Nobody transcends it. You're dead. Lord Fifth should consider getting a new master." It was about to leave when Meng Hao, expression unchanged, calmly said, "So you don't know how to transcend tribulation, and you still call yourself ancient?" His face sneered. When it saw the sneer, its feathers stood on end, glaring. "I don't know," it panted. "You dare say I do know? I can't be fooled easily." It put on a supercilious expression and began preening. "So you're just a flashy old bird," Meng Hao said, sneer growing. He closed his eyes, not deigning to continue. The parrot was instantly furious, pecking at its feathers. "Who said I don't know? I know methods to suppress and delay heavenly tribulation. There's no celestial magic I don't know." "So you really don't know," Meng Hao replied. "Heavenly tribulation is nothing but farts," the parrot roared. "Back then I could transcend with a breath. Now I know thousands, millions of ways. I'll tell you one. Find a miraculous life form whose roots and leaves connect like mother and son. The roots cannot be destroyed, the leaves never die. Hold the roots and use the leaves to defend against heavenly tribulation. That's how you transcend. Too bad such forms aren't common. Even similar ones are extinct. You'd need incredible luck. Just looking at you, it won't happen. Most likely you're dead." Meng Hao's eyes flickered, hearing the parrot's words. They made sense. His mind reeled because he'd thought of a miraculous life form from the Black Lands similar to what the parrot described. This chapter was sponsored by Buwan Dong, Lim Derek, CV, and Vang Sheng. Chapter 326, I haven't tried that out before. The roots cannot be destroyed, the leaves never die. The leaves never die, the roots cannot be destroyed. Meng Hao's eyes filled with thought as he put the pieces together. A miraculous life form that inherently displayed the type of relationship between a mother and a son, rare in the world, almost never seen. What appeared in Meng Hao's mind now were words he had heard years ago. The larva cannot be destroyed, and the thread cannot be broken. The thread cannot be broken, nor can the larva be destroyed. These words were describing a creature that, when fed sieve net thunder mulberry leaves, would transform from frigid snow into the miraculous bug called the eyeless larva. 1. The eyeless larva and related information were discussed mostly in Chapter 165. Besides that larva, there's another way, but their growth isn't complete. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he thought of his blood clones. Because the nucleus of each blood clone was the skin of the meat jelly, as long as he himself didn't die, they couldn't be destroyed. Even if they were, they could easily be recreated. It might be a bit of an exaggeration to say that they were eternally indestructible, but the fact remained that it would be very difficult to truly kill them. However, the cultivation bases of the blood clones were too far removed from his own. They might be difficult to destroy, but when it came time to face the heavenly tribulation, Meng Hao knew that the blood clones would be defeated. Unless I refined 9 generations of blood, then added myself in, thus forcing another generation on top of the 9. Then it would be a blood spirit. I could not be destroyed, and the spirit would never disperse. As Meng Hao sat lost in thought, the haughty parrot once again looked at Meng Hao with disdain. "Don't even think about it," it said suddenly. "Only people with incredible luck and amazing fortune can ever have a chance to get a miraculous life form like that. As an example, I, Lord Fifth, once had a miraculous lotus root. Only someone like me could ever get something of the sort." Meng Hao ignored the parrot and continued to think. A new thought suddenly flickered in his mind. The parrot's words had opened up the floodgates of his mind regarding transcending tribulation. After all, he was not in the blood immortal legacy zone. This time, he would be facing the test alone. He had been thinking about the matter for a very, very long time. The parrot's words just now had lit a virtual fire in his mind. All kinds of thoughts and questions exploded inside of him. Regarding miraculous life forms, he thought, there's something else I could do. I could borrow demonic chi from heaven and earth to create an illusory incarnation. After all, the incarnation can carry my will with it to kill people. I wonder if I could use it to defend against heavenly tribulation. It's too bad the incarnation is so weak. However, it's an area that could be explored. His eyes lit up as he realized that he actually already had 3 types of miraculous life forms. Plus, I have the meat jelly, he thought. His eyes contained an imperceptible glitter. Using the meat jelly when transcending tribulation would be his last resort. He had long since taken note of its ability to consume lightning. "Forget it, just forget it," said the parrot, looking askance at Meng Hao. It sighed, its face filled with an expression that exuded omniscience. That method just now was definitely too difficult. In all the heavens, I think only Lord Fifth could pull off something like that. For other people, well, it could only happen in their dreams. Lord Fifth is an erudite, ancient celestial bird. Omniscient. Okay, I'll tell you of another method. This one isn't very hard. Actually, it's pretty simple. However, such a method is also only available to people with extraordinary luck and fortune. It's not very complicated. You just need to have a soul of lightning next to you. If you do, it will be much easier to transcend the tribulation. However, you'll have to train the soul of lightning yourself. Basically, you start out with the soul of a cultivator with a very profound cultivation base. Then, you slowly use lightning to transform its soul embodiment. Over time, you gradually increase the amount of lightning. Assuming the soul isn't destroyed, then you eventually force it to transform into a soul of lightning that you can use. The parrot yawned and then flew out of the immortal's cave in a flash of light. Outside, it once again began to instruct the cultivators about its self-proclaimed celestial magic. Meng Hao sat cross-legged in the immortal's cave, thinking about what the parrot had said about the soul of lightning. A strange expression appeared on his face, and after a while, he slapped his bag of holding. The blood-colored mask appeared in his hand. He sent his spiritual sense inside to find the Li clan patriarch, who had been forgotten by the meat jelly after the appearance of the parrot. The Li clan patriarch was no longer listless like before. However, as soon as he caught sight of Meng Hao, his entire body began to tremble. Clearly, his fear of the meat jelly had reached the ultimate level. Meng Hao circled around the Li clan patriarch, examining his soul embodiment. After a while, his eyes began to shine. The glow in his eyes struck terror into the heart of the Li clan patriarch. What are you planning?" he asked cautiously. He had a bad feeling, as if something miserable were about to happen to his soul embodiment. After his time spent being tormented by the meat jelly, without even the option of seeking death, he was no longer as proud and haughty as he used to be. Meng Hao didn't say anything. After examining the Li clan patriarch for a moment, he did something with his spiritual sense, and a lightning bolt appeared within the blood-colored mask. It crackled down toward the Li clan patriarch, slamming directly onto his soul embodiment. "Damn it, what the hell are you doing?" He trembled, and his soul embodiment flickered as if it were about to dissipate. Meng Hao nodded, then used his spiritual sense again to summon another lightning bolt, and then another. Rumbling booms sounded out as they fell down onto the Li clan patriarch, who emitted constant miserable shrieks. This process went on for about 2 hours, until the Li clan patriarch's soul embodiment was growing dim. "You psycho," cried the Li clan patriarch, gnashing his teeth. "You're a damned lunatic, and that meat jelly is nothing but a nightmare. One of these days I'll get my revenge." He continued to curse, but inside actually felt quite pathetic and was heaving constant sighs. In the immortal's cave, Meng Hao opened his eyes. The Li clan patriarch has an extraordinary cultivation base. He meets all the requirements to become a soul of lightning. From now on, I'll need to use all methods at my disposal to get him accustomed to lightning. I also need an eyeless larva. Before that, though, I should head out and collect the last medicinal plant ingredient I need for the perfect gold core. Having made up his mind, Meng Hao sent his spiritual sense out to find Huang Daxian. He was currently looking on complacently as the parrot flew around above a group of people who were all running around in various patterns. Huang Daxian's body trembled as Meng Hao's voice suddenly echoed out in his head. Then, his mind was branded with an image of the plant Meng Hao needed. Half a month later, Meng Hao was looking down at a jade slip, inside of which was information regarding the medicinal plant he needed, a clue uncovered during the investigation carried out by his group of over 100 cultivators. Meng Hao stood and left the immortal's cave. Dongliwo City, member of the United Nine Cities. Inside the jade slip was also a map of the Black Lands, marked with the location of Dongliwo City, which wasn't very far away. By now, Meng Hao was familiar with the power structure of the Black Lands, thanks to his more than 100 followers. Other than the Black Lands Palace in the United Nine, the Black Lands were inhabited completely by rogue cultivators. In some cases, groups banded together to form small-scale powers. Some were strong, some were weak, but regardless, they existed in a state of disunity. As far as the United Nine, it was made up of 9 of the Black Lands, most powerful cultivator clans, and the cities that had grown up around them. They had banded together and formed an alliance to stand up against the power of the Black Lands Palace. The ingredient Meng Hao needed was a spirit orchid leaf, a medicinal plant that wasn't particularly rare. That having been said, it wasn't something that the small-scale powers would have. It would only be available in one of the 9 major cities. According to the information he'd received, Dongliwo City would be holding an auction soon. Medicinal pills would be up for sale, as well as medicinal plants. As for the spirit orchid leaf, it could actually be consumed directly to treat injuries, so of course people would be willing to purchase it. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve as he left the region of his immortal's cave for the first time in more than a year. Transforming into a beam of prismatic light, he shot like lightning off into the distance. Thanks to the primordial heavenly replenishing pill, his hair was now black once again and his eyes were filled with obstruseness. He wore a green gown and his features were handsome and refined. On his forehead was mark that looked both like a scale and a feather, and yet was neither. Overall, he appeared completely extraordinary. As he flew away from the immortal's cave, the meat jelly and the parrot followed him. As they flew along, the parrot continuously chided the meat jelly, who squabbled back endlessly. It went on for a few days, with the two of them occasionally getting into blows. Finally, the parrot used its trump card. It went on with a series of "do you want to know?" questions, which resulted in the meat jelly transforming into a small bell which the parrot fastened around its leg. The parrot finally came to rest on Meng Hao's shoulder, perched there with an arrogant look on its face that said that it was a one-of-a-kind ancient celestial bird, esteemed in heaven and earth, unique in all creation. The ground beneath them was pitch black, with occasional black-colored plants growing up from the soil. It all looked very sinister. The entire time, Meng Hao didn't stop once. Following the information on the map, he flew straight toward Dongliwo City. On one particular evening several days later, a green city appeared up ahead. It wasn't grand and majestic, but rather square in shape and apparently constructed from vegetation. The city walls were created from interwoven plants. The greenness created by the plants made the city stick out conspicuously from the black soil. In the middle of the city, trees grew up. All of the trees had massive amounts of branches growing out from them, which were also interwoven to form layers. The city as a whole seemed to be formed of 2 levels, one on the ground, the other in the sky. There was a third level which was formed by a single, enormous tree, the interior of the city. From a distance, the city looked very bizarre. Meng Hao's eyes began to shine. As they approached, they saw the city gate, which was formed by 8 giant interlocking trees. Cultivators walked in and out of the gate, and inside the city itself were quite a few cultivators. Perched atop the massive tree in the center of the city was what appeared to be an enormous phoenix, several dozens of meters in length. It had bright, scarlet feathers and was incredibly beautiful. A closer look revealed that it wasn't actually a phoenix, but a peacock. It would occasionally look around at the city with an arrogant expression. It didn't emit the power of a cultivation base, but from a distance it still emanated a powerful, threatening aura that Meng Hao could sense. It caused his pupils to constrict. The look in the peacock's eyes seemed to say that no one was worthy of its gaze. It looked around arrogantly, seemingly despising all that it saw. Suddenly, Meng Hao heard the parrot whisper, "You dare to act like that in front of Lord Fifth, bitch." Meng Hao had read some information about this scarlet peacock in the Jade slip. It was a holy animal of the Dongliwo clan. For some reason unknown to outsiders, it would occasionally take to flight and circle around the city. Everyone who saw the spectacle would praise its beauty. Just as they were about to enter the city, Meng Hao heard the parrot next to him, panting heavily. Now that I'm closer I can see that flirty look in its eyes. A red bird, I've never tried that out before. Before Meng Hao could react or even think about what it meant, the parrot was gone. Meng Hao watched as ripples spread out in the air, and a multicolored streak shot up through the air toward the peacock. Dongliwo in Chinese is Chinese letter Dongliu. Dong means east. Luo is a sound word with no meaning. Dongliwo is also the name of a real location in China. Chapter 327, Angry Dongliwo Ling. Everything was happening too quickly. Meng Hao gaped in astonishment. Before he could react, he saw the multicolored streak flying through the air at high speed. It looked like a shooting star as it headed toward the beautiful, proud scarlet peacock. Within the colorful light was none other than the parrot, shooting forward like a spear, head upraised. Its sharp, curved beak emitted a cold glow as it clenched its body tight into something that looked like a spearhead. Meng Hao wasn't sure if he was mistaken or not, but it very much seemed like its eyes were shining with excitement, as well as determination and lasciviousness. It moved with incredible speed. In one breath it was quite a distance from the peacock. In the next breath it was upon it. All of the feathers on the body of the scarlet peacock stood on end as it turned its beautiful head, emanating the powerful might of a phoenix, seeming to warn everyone from encroaching upon its space. Meng Hao's eyes went wide, and his mind began to spin. He suddenly had a very bad feeling about what was happening. He watched the multicolored streak of light that was the parrot as it charged directly toward the peacock's rear end. Aye! An intense, miserable screech echoed out from the once graceful and beautiful peacock. The sound was wretched, as an indescribable pain washed over it. All its feathers stood on end, and its expression was twisted and distorted. It was no longer elegant, and its beauty had now been transformed into suffering. It trembled violently as its scream filled Dongliwo City, which of course attracted the attention of large numbers of cultivators. All of them lifted their heads up in astonishment. What they saw was the peacock, always so graceful and haughty, now trembling violently and screaming miserably. It was flying haphazardly through the air, beating its wings, as if it was trying to shake something off of its body. Its efforts were of no avail. As it screamed, its eyes turned red, and a billowing flame sea appeared around it. Within the fire, the peacock continued to scream intensely. Its feathers bristled to the point where it looked like it might explode from insanity. All of the cultivators in the city were staring with gaping mouths, unsure of what exactly was happening to it. However, they could all sense that the peacock was currently experiencing indescribable pain. It was at this time that members of Dongliwo City's cultivator clan emerged, looking worried as they flew up toward the peacock. One among their number was a young woman wearing a long, emerald-green garment. Her features were beautiful and enchanting, but her phoenix-like eyes were filled with worry and confusion as she approached the peacock. "Scarlet Peacock, what's wrong?" she said. Her voice was pleasant like the song of a lark. As soon as the cultivators down in the city saw her, they began to discuss the matter in hushed tones. "That's Goddess Dongliwo Ling of the Dongliwo clan." 2. Dongliwo Ling's name is Chinese letter Dongliwo Ling. Dongliwo is the name of their clan, kind of a made-up name. Ling means spirit. That's none other than one of the three most beautiful female cultivators in the Black Lands, Dongliwo Ling. By this time, Meng Hao had ducked his head down and hurried into the city, his scalp slowly growing numb. He blended into the crowd, his face ashen, looking up at the flames in the sky. The miserable shrieks of the peacock continued to ring out. "Damned parrot," thought Meng Hao, grinding his teeth. There was nothing he could do about it, though. He should have considered the parrot's indulgences. Back when it was stuck in the copper mirror, Meng Hao had to take the initiative to provoke something like this. But now that it was free, it couldn't hold itself back after seeing a pretty, feathered peacock. "I can't let people find out that I brought it here," he thought with a frown. Up above, the peacock let out another shriek. Now, everyone could see a multicolored beam of light whizzing through the air near the peacock's rear end. Before anyone could see clearly what was inside of it, it built up some momentum and then shot back toward the peacock. The peacock tried to dodge out of the way but was unable to. When people saw this, they could only watch on in dumbstruck silence. Based on what they had just seen, they now understood why the elegant scarlet peacock was emitting such blood-curdling screams. A buzz of conversation immediately rose up as everyone expressed their disbelief and astonishment. What is that thing? What it's doing is indescribable. That multicolored light is entering. My God, is there really a magical item that does something like this? What is it? It's simply too vicious, too malicious, too penetrating." Meng Hao stood in the crowd, his jaw clenched. He felt as if his face were burning, and he was very worried about everyone finding out that the multicolored light had been brought into the city by him. The Dongliwo clan cultivators floated in midair, trying to figure out how to help the peacock. Dongliwo Ling's face was filled with anxiety. However, the sight of the multicolored light caused them to stare in shock. The scarlet peacock's wails were pitiful, its eyes filled with humiliation and pain. Suddenly, it began to fall to the ground, body trembling. The Dongluo clan cultivators rushed forward in a frenzy. As they neared, the multicolored light disappeared, leaving behind only an exhausted panting sound. The Dongluo clan cultivators' faces were extremely unsightly. Dongluo Ling's was virtually bursting with flames. Moments later, the entire city was sealed down tightly. More Dongluo clan cultivators appeared, bursting with bestial killing intent and rage as they began to search for the multicolored light. One could imagine what savage methods they would employ to punish the mysterious multicolored light if they ever found it. As for the scarlet peacock, it was currently being given emergency treatment. Meng Hao's face was just as unsightly as he dispersed along with the crowd. He wasn't sure where the parrot had gone to. If it suddenly appeared on his shoulder, then he would have to leave the city immediately. He suddenly realized that the meat jelly was actually very well behaved. As night fell upon Dongluo City, word of what had just happened spread through the various cultivators. Late that night, the wrath of the entire Dongluo clan was burning. In the Dongluo clan's manor house, Dongluo Ling stood there with tears in her eyes as she comforted the trembling, sleeping scarlet peacock. Every time it trembled, her eyes would flash with killing intent. "I'm going to find that multicolored light," she said, gnashing her teeth, "and when I do, I'll hack it into pieces." Meanwhile, Meng Hao sat cross-legged in his room in a local inn, his face dark. Finally, he opened his eyes from meditation and let out a soft sigh as the parrot appeared. It looked the same as ever, multicolored, with the meat jelly bell still attached to its foot. Its expression was one of arrogance, and its eyes flickered with contentment and complacency. "Hey, Lord Fifth is back," it said, strutting back and forth on the table, lifting its head up to stare at Meng Hao. "Did you have fun?" asked Meng Hao coolly, his facing expressionless. "Lots of fun," replied the parrot. It took a deep breath, and the haughtiness in its face disappeared to be replaced by a look of reminiscence. "I've tried out many different purely colored birds such as that," it said with a sigh. "One year I even tried out their ancestor, the phoenix. However, scarlet is the only color I haven't tried. Not bad, really not bad." "Do you know how much difficulty it's going to cause if they found out it was you?" said Meng Hao. "What are you scared of?" it said, its face filled with conceited grandeur. "Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife? If they dare to mess with me, I'll screw 'em to death. I'll deal with them like I dealt with that bird. I'm not talking about you, of course. Birds have their tenacity, and so do people. Tenacity, that's the key. Look, I have a duty to help you out. Join me in your loudest voice." A solemn-looking face suddenly appeared on the bell on the parrot's foot. "You're immoral, simply too wicked. My life's mission is definitely to convert you, you sinister bird." The parrot looked down at the meat jelly with a look of disdain. "Shut up, B_TCH. Did I ever not take you with me to do these kinds of things? Do you remember the space ape from that year? Did I take you with me or not? How about the flame phoenix? Did I take you with me or not? What about that big hairy fish in the Star Sea or that tiger in the 8th mountain? What about the great golden dragon? Did you forget about that?" The meat jelly hesitated for a moment, then gritted its teeth and said, You forced me." Meng Hao sat off to the side, watching on silently. Originally, he had planned to say a few things about what had happened today, but hearing the parrot list off its achievements, he suddenly realized he didn't have anything to say. He sighed, shaking his head and ignoring the two, instead closing his eyes and continuing to meditate. As the night went on, the Dongluo clan used all its power, all their precious treasures, all their divine sense to search every corner of the city. It was all to no avail. As the search continued, 3 days slowly passed. During the 3 days, Meng Hao went out twice. Each time, the parrot would perch pompously on his shoulder to accompany him. On a few occasions, they encountered members of the Dongluo clan. However, the uncomely parrot didn't seem to attract any suspicions. "Don't worry," said the parrot. "I've done things like this before on many occasions, and I've never gotten caught. The only things left behind are legends of Lord Fifth. However, no one ever knows my true appearance." Meng Hao didn't respond. On the 2 occasions he went out, Meng Hao made inquiries about the auction which was to take place in 10 days, and was able to confirm that 10 spirit orchid leaves would be up for sale. He also made some inquiries about the price. This particular plant would appear in the auction every few years, and the price was always a bit over 10,000 spirit stones. Meng Hao personally didn't have many spirit stones, but Jai Hongdong's bag of holding had ultra-high-grade spirit stones, as well as a collection of regular spirit stones to the number of about 20,000. It wasn't much when it came to duplicating medicinal pills, but it should be enough to purchase the spirit orchid leaf and still have some left over. On evening of the fourth day, Meng Hao sat cross-legged in his room. Suddenly, his eyes opened and he let out a sigh. As he had anticipated, trouble had come looking for him. He looked up at the door. It didn't take long before it exploded, shattered to pieces that showered into the room. This chapter was sponsored by Vangcheng, Steve Mamavi, and Hyo Budaman. I'm pretty sure this is a reference to Angry Birds. Dongliuo Ling's name is Chinese letter. Dongliuo Ling. Dongliuo is the name of their clan, kind of a made-up name. Ling means spirit. Chapter 328, Establishing Strength. The instant the door shattered into pieces, a whooshing sound could be heard, and the parrot disappeared without a trace. Meng Hao wasn't sure where it had gone to hide, but obviously it had seen the look on his face and knew the trouble it had stirred up. However, instead of cleaning up its own mess, it left it to Meng Hao. Meng Hao's mood sank even deeper. His eyes flickered with coldness. He knew that the law of the jungle was a strict one and was revered as a way of life in the Black Lands. Weakness and retreat gave an opponent even more power and reason to crush you. In the Black Lands there was no reasoning, there was only strength. The strong could plunder cities and enslave clans. In the Black Lands, you could do anything you wanted, and no one would do anything against you unless it was to their benefit. If you didn't encroach on someone's territory, they wouldn't pay attention to you at all, even if you slaughtered countless other cultivators. For example, the 9 clans that made up the United Nine had changed countless times throughout the years. One would rise, another would fall, down to this very day. After the door was destroyed, 2 people charged into the room, accompanied by a cold, glittering light. As they descended upon him, Meng Hao let out a cold snort. It didn't matter that he was actually in the wrong. He sat there cross-legged, his killing intent flashing. He lifted his right hand up as fast as lightning, and a single finger attack shot out. A miserable scream immediately filled the air, and a corpse toppled backward out the door. At the same time, his 4 remaining fingers curled into a claw which latched onto the neck of a black-robed cultivator. No matter how he struggled, the man couldn't move an inch. Meng Hao immediately sent spiritual power into the man's cultivation base, sealing it down tightly. When attacking, one cannot hesitate nor show weakness. That is a fundamental rule in the Black Lands. Meng Hao's expression was calm as he looked over at the door. Standing outside were 8 cultivators wearing black robes. Their expressions were serious, but they didn't dare to enter the room. Instead, they stood there looking vigilantly at Meng Hao. "Dongliuo Ling," said Meng Hao coolly, "is this the way the Dongliuo clan receives its guests? You'd better provide an explanation, or I'll turn your skull into a cooking pot." The people outside remained silent as a woman stepped out from behind them. She wore a long, emerald-green robe and was quite beautiful. Her skin was so delicate it seemed a breeze could break it. This was none other than Dongliuo Ling. Her brow was furrowed as she glared into Meng Hao's room. "Since you know who I am, then you'd better let my man go immediately. Then we can discuss some matters." Her voice was pleasant but filled with iciness. Her cultivation base was beyond ordinary. It appeared to be at the early core formation stage. Meng Hao grinned. He might have the appearance of a scholar, but looking at him now, he possessed a certain fierceness. He suddenly clenched his right hand. Loud cracking sounds could be heard. The man's body twitched as his neck was crushed into pieces. After he was thoroughly dead, Meng Hao stood up and turned into a blur as he rushed toward the door. Dongliuo Ling laughed mockingly. She stood her ground, not moving at all. As she glanced down at the body of the dead man, the 8 men around her suddenly moved forward to obstruct Meng Hao's way. 2 of them were white-haired old men. Their gazes were like lightning, their stature tall. Shockingly, they even had totem tattoos on their arms. However, they didn't look like Western desert cultivators. They had extraordinary cultivation bases at the mid-core formation stage. Their bodies flashed as they moved forward to defend Dongliuo Ling. They were fast, but Meng Hao was even faster. In the blink of an eye, he was out the door. He flicked his sleeve, and a gale-force wind suddenly exploded out. It screamed out in all directions, causing the bodies of the 8 cultivators to shake as they spit up blood. They all retreated, looks of astonishment on their faces. This caused Dongliuo Ling's face to change, and her pupils to constrict before she could even think about it. The faces of 2 old men in front of her fell. Meng Hao was as calm as ever as he neared Dongliuo Ling. The eyes of the 2 old men flickered as they also advanced, hands flickering in incantation gestures. Their cultivation bases roared with power as their magical techniques appeared. "No core chi," said Meng Hao, his expression intentionally lofty. "Insects. Even as he spoke, his right hand lifted up and then descended downward in a fist. Boom! An expression of shock filled the face of one of the men. The magical technique he had been incanting immediately collapsed to pieces. He felt an incredible power slam into him, and blood sprayed from his mouth as he staggered backward several paces. As for the other old man, his eyes narrowed and he let out a howl as he attacked. Meng Hao's left hand snaked out and he tapped the man's forehead lightly. Suddenly, demonic qi rose up, visible only to Meng Hao. It poured into the man, causing his veins to bulge and his eyes to fill with confusion. All of this happened in a single instant, and then Meng Hao was standing directly in front of the shocked Dongliuo Ling. Dongliuo Ling knew that she had acted rashly and that her opponent was far more powerful than her. The only thing she could do now was angrily say, "Do you really dare to offend me in my own clan's city? You're dead for sure." Meng Hao looked her over coldly. Then he lifted up his right hand and was about to grab her, when suddenly he frowned and paused in mid-motion. Then he pointed his hand down toward the ground. The entire inn began to shake as invisible qi rushed up from all directions to circle around Meng Hao. It formed into a barrier to protect against a black spear which was currently shooting toward him from off in the distance. The spear was as thick as the hand of a child and was covered with complex swirling patterns. It whistled through the air, slamming into the demonic qi vortex surrounding Meng Hao. A boom echoed out and the spear shook, then collapsed into pieces. The pieces transformed into green-colored core qi, which then dissipated in all directions. The spearhead, however, did not disappear. It was still stabbing through the vortex. Just as it seemed it would pierce all the way through, Meng Hao reached up and tapped the top of the spearhead. As soon as he touched it, the spearhead trembled and then exploded into fragments of core qi. Dongliuo Ling took advantage of this opportunity to back up about 20 meters. It seemed she was about to flee. Meng Hao coolly said, "Get back here." The words were simple, but the instant she heard them, Dongliuo Ling's face went pale white. She had suddenly discovered that her entire body was incapable of moving. The old man who Meng Hao had just tapped on the forehead looked confused, as if his spirit had fled. Seemingly not even under his own control, he bound Dongliuo Ling, grabbed her, and then flew back toward Meng Hao. It was at this moment that Meng Hao lifted his head and looked off into the distance. It was currently dusk, and there were no cultivators visible anywhere. Even the inn seemed to be empty. However, far off in the distance, a middle-aged man stood on a rooftop. His body was skinny and withered, almost like a skeleton. However, he emitted a dignified aura as he looked toward Meng Hao. Their gazes met and their spiritual sense shot out, emanating with massive pressure. Invisible ripples exploded out. Meng Hao didn't move, but the face of the middle-aged man flickered, and he retreated several paces, coughing up blood. "So," said Meng Hao, his voice cool, "mid-core formation core qi turns out to be slightly more powerful than insects." "Your Excellency, who are you?" asked the stooped, middle-aged man. "Why do you wish to make the Dongliuo clan your enemy?" His expression was serious, and it seemed he couldn't see Meng Hao's cultivation base. "Sir, that is exactly the same question I wanted to ask you," said Meng Hao calmly. "I have no grievance with the Dongliuo clan, so why did you send everyone in the area away and then surround me and try to kill me?" Dongliuo Ling ground her teeth and glared at Meng Hao, her eyes radiating hatred. "From the day the Scarlet Peacock was injured until today, 13 people have entered the city. I've personally looked into the other 12. You are the last one and also the most suspicious." When she thought about how the Scarlet Peacock couldn't even fly now and would always tremble and shake as it slept, her hatred toward Meng Hao seeped into her bones. Meng Hao's face sank. His voice cold, he said, "What ultimate absurdity! You're just trying to stir up trouble." He didn't even make an attempt to explain anything. His simple response made him seem even more awe-inspiring. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment. Finally, he clasped hands and bowed toward Meng Hao, a bitter smile on his face. "This is all just a misunderstanding," he said with a sigh. "My little sister went off on her own to investigate things. Fellow Taoist, I truly hope you can forgive us. That Scarlet Peacock is my little sister's most beloved pet, and what happened has really aroused our ire. Therefore, we accidentally offended you. Sir, I am Dongliuo Han. I implore you to give me a bit of face. What do you say?" Meng Hao looked hesitant. He waved his right hand, and the old man who had bound up Dongliuo Ling no longer looked confused. He regained his senses, then immediately began to tremble. He looked at Meng Hao as if he were a ghost. Dongliuo Ling's body flashed, transforming into a beam of light as she flew over to stand next to the middle-aged man. She glared viciously at Meng Hao. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist," said the man. Allow me to give you a Dongluo City Command Medallion. With this medallion, your time in the city will be much more convenient. Dongluo Han pulled out a black command medallion which he tossed toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao grabbed it and looked it over. In his time spent in the city recently, he'd learned that in Dongluo City there were 5 different types of command medallions. Scarlet was the highest, black was secondary, then yellow, blue, and white. Each medallion came with various privileges within the city. For example, in order to participate in the upcoming auction, one needed at the least a yellow command medallion. After Meng Hao took the command medallion, Dongluo Han once again clasped hands and bowed, then grabbed the obstinate Dongluo Ling and left, along with the other cultivators. As she left, Dongluo Ling's features were filled with fury. "Third bro, why did you compromise with that guy?" she asked. "We surveilled him for several days. Of the 13 suspects, he was definitely the most suspicious. Some people even saw him with a multicolored parrot." Before Dongluo Han could respond, a dignified voice suddenly could be heard from off to the side. "I told him to." Along with the voice, a man appeared. He looked to be middle-aged, but there was also some sort of ancientness to him. As soon as he appeared, Dongluo Han and Dongluo Ling lowered their heads and saluted. "Greetings, clan chief. The Black Lands are falling into great chaos. The United Nine face imminent danger. At the moment, the last thing we need is to provoke powerful enemies. That guy appears to be in the mid-core formation stage, but his attack just now was matchlessly ruthless. He dispatched another mid-core formation cultivator with no difficulty. He seems like a rogue cultivator, but at the same time not. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't matter, but for now, we need to exercise caution." Dongluo Han's name in Chinese is Chinese letter. Dongluo Han Dongluo is their clan name. Han is a sound word. Chapter 329. Lord Fifth flies into a raid. "The Black Lands in great chaos," said Dongluo Han, gaping at the clan chief. Dongluo Ling also gaped for a moment. For as long as she could remember, the law of the jungle in the Black Lands made it appear on the surface as if there were no rules. However, because of the Black Lands Palace in the United Nine, there was a bit of stability. Superficially, the Black Lands seemed chaotic, but the powers beneath the surface made things much less chaotic than they seemed. The Dongluo clan chief was quiet for a moment before looking up at the stars in the sky and saying, "4 days ago in Saturn City, Elder Tumu was killed by Patriarch Death's spirit from the Western Lands." His words caused Dongluo Han's face to flicker. The surrounding cultivators all looked shocked and doubtful. Breathing heavily, Dongluo Han said, "Elder Tumu was an almighty spirit-severing cultivator. The 9 clans that made up the United Nine were all very different. Furthermore, various clans had come and gone throughout the years. However, the main reason the United Nine was able to stand up to the Black Lands Palace was because of their 4 great mountains. These 4 mountains housed 4 spirit-severing patriarchs. The clans of these 4 were naturally the leaders in the alliance. With the presence of the 4 patriarchs, they had been able to oppose the Black Lands Palace down to this day." The Dongluo clan chief slowly continued. After Elder Tumu perished, the Black Lands Palace immediately invaded his Saturn clan. In a single day, all the clan members were slaughtered, and their city was taken over by the Black Lands Palace. Dongluo Han gasped, "The Black Lands Palace, the Western Desert." After a moment's thought, his heart and mind trembled. This news caused him to completely forget about the matter of the Scarlet Peacock. "This matter must be kept a secret," said Dongluo Ling, looking at the other surrounding cultivators. The clan chief shook his head. "It won't take long before news of the incident spreads throughout all the Black Lands. Even if the United Nine tries to cover it up, the news will spread." He looked tired and very anxious. Dongluo Ling was about to say something else, when suddenly a miserable shriek could be heard coming from the top level of the city, where the Scarlet Peacock was. The cry was one of ultimate misery, as if it were experiencing indescribable pain. Dongluo Ling's face immediately flashed. Next to her, Dongluo Han gaped in shock. All of the cultivators immediately looked upward. As for Meng Hao, he was sitting cross-legged inside of his room. After the Dongluo clan members left, the staff of the inn returned, giving Meng Hao a wide, respectful berth. The owner of the inn waited on him nervously, allowing him to change rooms and even giving him some spirit stones before making an excuse to leave. "At first I thought I was going to have to fight my way out and come back in disguise," thought Meng Hao, looking down at the black command medallion. Who would have thought that the Dongluo clan would back down? A puzzled look appeared on his face. "Has something happened I don't know about?" It was at this point that he heard the miserable shrieks coming from outside. He immediately stood, opened a window, and looked out, a strange expression on his face. Another scream rose up into the air. This time, it was obvious that it was a different scarlet peacock than the one from before. Even as looks of shock filled the faces of everyone in the city, a third shriek echoed out. At the same time, three figures, blazing like fire, shot out from the second level of the city. It was three more scarlet peacocks. The largest was nearly 100 meters long, the smallest only about 30. They were letting out shrill shrieks. Anyone who heard them could almost feel their pain. A boom rattled out, and for some inexplicable reason, a massive force seemed to rip through one of the huge trees that made up the second level of the city. It shot in and out several times, until it had cut out a character. 5. A bang rang out as a tall, strapping man appeared in midair, surrounded by a multicolored glow. His features were indistinct, but he gave on an eminently conceited air as he floated there in midair looking down on the ground. The three peacocks trembled. Beneath them, the massive character 5 that had been cut into the tree was extremely clear. You all listen carefully to what Lord Fifth has to say. When I was born, I was the most revered in heaven and earth. If I want people to wear clothes, they wear clothes. If I want animals to have fur or feathers, then they grow it immediately. The echoing voice immediately evoked the wrath of the Dongliwo clan. Furious shouts could be heard from within the Dongliwo clan. A ruddy-faced old man suddenly charged out, emanating the power of the nascent soul stage. He shot toward the parrot, who was currently utilizing the meat jelly's transforming ability. You dare to defame the residents of the Dongliwo clan? Get back here. You old fart, screeched the man-form parrot. Lord Fifth is gonna screw you to death. His body flickered as he shot toward the old man. He radiated a savage potency, as if he were a member of an elite death squad. The way he is described here is a reference to the movie series The Expendables, the most powerful and esteemed person in all the heavens. This powerful vigor radiated thickly off of him, as if there were no orifice in the world that he couldn't conquer. The parrot, in the form of a virulent, muscular man, suddenly appeared next to the old nascent soul cultivator. The speed of his movement left the man shocked, and before he could do anything, they slammed into each other. As the boom rattled out, the nascent soul cultivator's face twisted. Cold sweat burst out from his forehead as he realized that his opponent had been shooting straight toward the area roughly a hand's breadth below his navel, if he hadn't moved quickly enough. Before he could continue along with this train of thought, he suddenly felt a cold air on his back. The man-form parrot was off to the side, raising his head up and giving out a piercing howl. You're far too wicked, said a voice. Doing this kind of thing is very immoral, very, very immoral. You should. Shut the hell up, B_*TCH. Lord Fifth is gonna screw this guy to death. The man-parrot's eyes grew green as he glared at the nascent soul cultivator, let out a wild shout, and then charged forward. The old man's scalp went numb as he saw the strange man approaching him. This was the first time he had ever felt such fear in his heart. However, it was at this exact moment that a cold snort suddenly sounded out from within the Dongliwo clan. Two prismatic beams of light flew out, emanating the power of nascent soul cultivation bases. One of these men was even of the late nascent soul stage. A boom echoed out, and the man-parrot tumbled backward. His eyes grew even more green, and its body began to tremble with rage. I'm gonna screw you to death, all of you. No need to get so excited, said the meat jelly. Don't be so impulsive. Usra fire, cried the man-parrot as it floated there in the air. Suddenly, black flames leapt into being. Skywalker slaying, it cried again. The flames roared up into the sky. In the middle of all the black flames was the man-parrot, its body trembling. Suddenly, a black band of cloth appeared in its hand, which it wrapped around the top of its head, covering one eye. It was really a bizarre sight. Suddenly, it shot down toward the nascent soul cultivators. It moved with incredible speed. As it did, a black mist emanated out from its body, as well as fire. It gradually transformed into an enormous one-eyed raven, hundreds of meters long. It emanated a shocking power as it charged in a frenzy toward the three nascent soul cultivators. Everyone who saw this was astonished. Even Meng Hao's eyes were wide. The three nascent soul cultivators were pale-faced. They all began to perform incantations. Above them, the intensely shocking flames descended down. The faces of the nascent soul cultivators fell, and they retreated. A massive boom shook everything as a huge crater appeared in the ground. This crater was located in the very center of the city, causing the plants which composed the floor to begin to sway and sag. The entire second level of the city was virtually destroyed. The ground quaked, and all of the cultivators currently in the city flew up into the air, faces pale with astonishment. There was nothing alive within the crater, and the enormous black raven had disappeared without a trace. The only thing left behind was a wildly arrogant voice which broke the silence. Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When the Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife? This was the only sound that echoed out into the quiet. Dongliwo Ling's eyes were filled with fear, and off to the side, Dongliwo Han was panting. The Dongliwo clan chief had a serious expression on his face as he shot off toward the crater. His solemn voice called out, "Remember this, never ever provoke that cultivator. A person like him has a lot of helpers. We've reached a moment of truth. Make friends, not enemies." The ground eventually ceased quaking. Meng Hao stood at the window, his expression strange. Everything that had happened just now made him suddenly think that the parrot was actually kind of funny. A multicolored light suddenly flashed in the room. The parrot appeared, looking exhausted. It flopped down onto the table and looked at Meng Hao out of the corner of its eye. It was huffing and puffing, but its expression was as haughty and proud as ever. Bitches, if Lord Fifth hadn't just recently awoken from slumber, then he would be much more powerful. I could have screwed the entire city. Then they would know how badass Lord Fifth is. As for you, kid, feel free to express your thanks by offering me some worship. Come, say it with me, have faith. Meng Hao turned, ignoring the parrot and instead looking once again out the window, his eyes shining with vigilance. He had long since pulled out the good luck charm to see if he could use it. It's too bad I haven't been able to harness the power of the rock. If I had, then even a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't be able to keep up with me. He continued to look out in the direction of the Dongliwo clan. As time passed, however, it seemed that the commotion had died down. No one came to cause trouble, and the Dongliwo clan didn't seem to be furious. Everything was smoothing over. This, however, made Meng Hao even more nervous, although what he was worried about wasn't the Dongliwo clan, but whatever momentous event had led to the current circumstances. If something major hadn't happened, the Dongliwo clan definitely wouldn't be acting like this. 3 days later, Meng Hao finally understood everything. One of the cities of the United Nine had been taken over after its spirit-severing patriarch perished. The Western Desert was controlling the Black Lands Palace. It seemed their goal was to devour all of the Black Lands. This news swept over the Black Lands like storm winds over the following days. Soon, everyone knew about it. When the day of the auction arrived, Meng Hao left his room. A cold wind blew outside, and the sky above was filled with dark clouds. It seemed a thunderstorm was approaching. The Black Lands are heading towards an upheaval, said Meng Hao to himself. He looked around to see cultivators all around him hurrying in the direction of the auction. The parrot was perched on Meng Hao's shoulder, looking around proudly as if it knew that one day it would take care of this place once and for all. This chapter was sponsored by Matthew Emery. Chapter 330, I'll marry anyone but you. The crater in the middle of Dongliwo City had long since been filled in with vast amounts of vegetation. The damaged second level was also restored to its normal condition. However, the 5 on the big tree could not be covered up, no matter what the Dongliwo clan did. The auction was being held not very far away from that very tree. As Meng Hao approached the auction, he couldn't help but see it. The parrot, perched on his shoulder, looked up at it out of the corner of his eye. With an egotistical expression, he lifted his head up as if everything were beneath him. The auction facility wasn't very large, a far cry from the Violet Fate Sect auction, in which tens of thousands of cultivators could participate. There were only a few hundred people seated around the auction floor, conversing in whispers. In the middle of it all was a raised platform. Only cultivators with the appropriate command medallions from the Dongliwo clan could enter. As soon as Meng Hao produced his black command medallion, he was immediately treated with favor and escorted to a comfortable seat. If the auction floor had been set up with private booths, Meng Hao would have been entitled to one because of the black command medallion. He sat down, his expression the same as ever, then closed his eyes and settled his mind. There weren't very many people seated near him, nor were there many people in the auction in general. This wasn't a very common sight in Dongliwo City. Because of the latest news circulating around the Black Lands, people were nervous. Many cultivators had already fled the cities. At the moment, the cities of the United Nine were no longer as safe as the outside world was. After all, the Black Lands Palace was targeting, not Black Lands cultivators in general, but the clans of the United Nine. Under such circumstances, Meng Hao knew that any people who had chosen to come attend this auction were people with utmost self-confidence. Considering war had already broken out, an auction like this most likely wouldn't be held again for some time. In fact, this would probably be the last auction in Dongluo City until the war ended. "I have to attend," said Meng Hao to himself. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, the auction would begin. More people began to filter in, and as they did, a man and a woman approached Meng Hao. As they neared, Meng Hao opened his eyes and saw Dongluo Han and the beautiful Dongluo Ling. Dongluo Han had a broad smile on his face, whereas Dongluo Ling looked irritated, like she didn't want to be there. "Fancy meeting you here, fellow Taoist," said Dongluo Han with a grin, approaching Meng Hao and sitting down next to him. "When last we parted, I was unable to inquire as to your respected name. Would it be possible to find out?" Dongluo Ling hesitated for a moment, and then sat down on the other side of Meng Hao. "My humble surname is Meng," said Meng Hao coolly. "I'm a simple rogue cultivator." He smiled at Dongluo Han. He could sense that the man hadn't come to cause him trouble but must have some other request, and had chosen this moment before the auction to bring it up. His presence here was not unexpected. Meng Hao had actually predicted that something like this would happen. "Brother Meng, there's no need to be so modest," replied Dongluo Han with a polite smile. "Considering how strong you are, I don't think any other rogue cultivators could measure up to you." His glance flitted over the parrot, and an imperceptible flicker of fear flashed through his eyes. As for Dongluo Ling, she sat on the other side of Meng Hao. During the entire time, she had been glaring fiercely at the parrot. If looks could kill, then she would have slain the parrot many times over by now. Meng Hao chuckled but didn't say anything. Since Dongluo Han hadn't brought up whatever request he planned to discuss, Meng Hao would just have to remain in the dark. However, he turned the good luck charm over and over in his palm, just as he had been doing for the past several days, never returning it to his bag of holding. It was at this point that the parrot looked impatiently at Dongluo Ling and said, "What the hell? Are you crazy? What do you keep staring at Lord Fifth for? Are you looking for a screw?" Dongluo Ling's eyes went wide and the veins on her face bulged out. Her beautiful features went purple, and she lunged to her feet, filled with explosive power. She was so angry that her entire body trembled. During her entire life, she had never met anyone who she wanted to chop into pieces as much as this parrot. As such, her disgust toward Meng Hao had also reached an incredible level. Dongluo Han gaped for a moment, then laughed bitterly and was about to say something when the parrot rolled its eyes. "Lord Fifth hates featherless, furless necks," it said in its high-pitched voice. "Lord Fifth also hates waists with no fur or feathers. Nice chest and rear end, but again, no fur, no feathers. Even if you offered yourself free of charge, Lord Fifth wouldn't accept." The expression on its face said that no matter what she said, it would never like her. Meng Hao felt a massive headache coming on. He cleared his throat. The parrot's words just now made Dongluo Ling feel as if her mind were about to explode. Flames of fire raged in her eyes, and she seemed on the verge of losing control. She was about to spring into action when Dongluo Han's face suddenly darkened. "Fifth sis, sit down." Dongluo Ling's head shot up to look at him. Gritting her teeth, she thought about the safety of her clan and of Dongluo Han's solemn expression. Bottling up her frustration and fury, she could do nothing but sit back down. However, she made a firm decision that in the future, no matter who tried to get her to come see this detestable parrot, she would absolutely refuse. "We've incurred Brother Meng's ridicule," said Dongluo Han. "Please don't take offense at my younger sister's impulsiveness. Actually, I brought her with me today to offer an apology for the matter from the other day." "You're too courteous, fellow Taoist Dongluo. That was just a misunderstanding. There's no need to bring it up." Meng Hao smiled, but inwardly he was on guard. He had anticipated that the clan would seek him out eventually. Because of the power he had displayed and the parrot's performance, most likely, he met the qualifications to be recruited by the clan. However, based on what Dongluo Han had said just now, Meng Hao could tell that he had something even bigger planned. "My younger sister lacks discipline, and unfortunately the clan is facing upheaval. Brother Meng, you are handsome and talented. You and I hit it off well right from the start. In fact, I don't even take you to be an outsider. Brother Meng, I wonder if you would." Meng Hao's eyes suddenly flashed, and he was about to say something when Dongluo Ling once again shot to her feet. "What are you talking about, third bro? You said you brought me here to make an apology. I get what you're trying to say, and I completely disagree. I don't care if it's your idea or the clan's idea, I will never comply. If you try to force me, then I'll kill myself. I will never become anyone's beloved, especially this shameless, vulgar, despicable hoodlum. She turned to glare coldly at Meng Hao, making no attempt to conceal her hatred, disgust, and contempt. You might as well quit your dreaming. I've taken an oath to never become someone's beloved, but even if I hadn't, there are countless heroes in the United Nine, and you don't measure up to even a single one of them. With that, she gave Meng Hao a final contemptuous look, then turned her supple waist and stalked off. Her slender, lithe figure would cause any man who saw it to feel tremors in his heart. Meng Hao frowned. After hearing Dong Luo Han's suggestion, he had been about to refuse. However, hearing Dong Luo Ling's reaction caused him to smile and hold his tongue. He looked back at Dong Luo Han. Dong Luo Han sighed inwardly. The idea hadn't come from the clan. It was something he had spontaneously come up with himself. He had the feeling that this cultivator named Meng possessed some unfathomable secret. As such, the idea of convincing him to join the clan had wormed its way into his head. Seeing Dong Luo Ling's fierce reaction, however, caused Dong Luo Han to shake his head with a bitter laugh. He gave Meng Hao an apologetic look and didn't bring the matter up again. Instead, he sat silently in thought for a moment and said, I assume you guessed my purpose in coming, Brother Meng. The Black Lands are falling into chaos. The alliance of United Nine Cities isn't equal to the Black Lands Palace, but our power is not too far off. Fellow Taoist, join the United Nine, and your every wish will be but a command away. Meng Hao didn't immediately refuse. He sat thinking for a short while before slowly responding, I can't make a decision immediately, sir. No matter, replied Dong Luo Han. Actually, if Meng Hao had agreed immediately, it would have aroused his suspicions. An initial refusal was actually the most appropriate response. The United Nine will be recruiting Black Lands cultivators throughout the coming days. I want you to know that the United Nine will naturally treat recruits with utmost sincerity. Even though war has broken out between the Black Lands Palace and the United Nine, you should be able to see that the United Nine will not easily be exterminated. Brother Meng, I will await your decision. You can use that command medallion to notify the Dongluo clan. In addition, you can use the medallion to borrow some spirit stones for use in the auction today, a gift from me. It was at this time that bells echoed out from the platform in the center of the auction floor. A glowing light emanated out, and a figure appeared on the platform. The auction was officially beginning. Dong Luo Han clasped hands and smiled, then made his way out of the auction area to look for other cultivators to recruit. The entire Dong Luo clan had been mobilized in an effort to get more rogue cultivators to bolster the alliance. There weren't a lot of people present, but the auction atmosphere was still lively. However, Meng Hao quickly noticed that there were three particular groups of people with whom others would not compete, regardless of what item was up for auction. At the most, they would watch on with dark expressions, but would hold their tongues. These three groups were located carefully in opposite locations of the auction floor, and would not compete with each other. Meng Hao glanced them over, then paid them no further attention. Regardless of where you went, there would be groups of various levels of influence and power. Groups like this would invariably flex their muscles at an important auction such as this. Perhaps under normal circumstances, they would be a bit more cautious. However, considering this was Dongluo City, and also considering the general chaos in the Black Lands, groups such as this were now far more valuable than before. What Meng Hao needed, though, was the spirit orchid leaf, of which 10 would be available in the auction. Considering the turmoil on the horizon for the Black Lands, medicinal plants that could heal injuries would be increasingly valuable. Despite that, Meng Hao still was able to acquire one. When he did, 7 or 8 cultivators eyed him greedily. His expression was the same as ever as he waited for the auction house to deliver the spirit orchid leaf to him, whereupon he prepared to leave. Next up for auction is a flag. This flag is a treasure suitable for the core formation stage and is called the Black Days Banner. When unfurled, it unleashes incredible power and places inky blackness beneath your feet. It can be used both offensively and defensively, and most strange of all, can be fused with your core chi. This treasure was acquired from within some ancient ruins. Furthermore, we guarantee that in all the Black Lands there is only this one. As auctioneer introduced the item, a woman walked out from behind him bearing a copper tray. Atop the tray was a piece of cloth the size of a fist. Meng Hao was just about to leave when he heard all of this. Suddenly, the parrot's eyes went wide, and it stared at the flag, its eyes filled with disbelief. After a moment the parrot didn't speak, but rather transmitted its shrill, disbelieving voice into Meng Hao's head. Get it. You have to get it. This is incredible luck for you. Chapter 331, Just Steal It. Meng Hao paused, then sat back and focused on the auction, his eyes glittering. The flag seemed unremarkable, but the parrot's interest assured Meng Hao it was extraordinary. 10,000 spirit stones, someone cried in a husky voice, even as the introduction echoed through the floor. Meng Hao surreptitiously glanced around and saw the voice came from one of the three groups dominating the auction. The opening bid caused everyone to frown. Nobody dared to counter. Even the other two groups only discussed it in low tones. The auctioneer sighed inwardly. Such situations never arose before. But given the disorder in the Black Lands, the United Nine wanted to recruit powerful cultivator groups. Thus the auction mattered less than maintaining good relations. Just as the auctioneer raised his hammer, Meng Hao's cool voice rang out. 15,000 spirit stones, he said calmly. The auction floor fell silent as every eye turned to him. The bidding group, more than 10 strong, 3 at core formation, the rest at foundation establishment, all glared darkly at Meng Hao. One of the 3 core formation cultivators, whose cultivation base was about the same as Meng Hao's, coldly said, "Hand over your 15,000 spirit stones to me and then leave. If you do, we won't cause any trouble for you." His words only caused Meng Hao to smile. 16,000 spirit stones, he said. The surrounding cultivators gasped. A strange light gleamed in Meng Hao's eyes, darkening the middle-aged man's face. Killing intent blazed in his gaze. "Are you fool enough to reject a face-saving offer? 20,000 spirit stones." 21,000 spirit stones. This was Meng Hao's limit. After purchasing the spirit orchid leaf, he'd exhausted his supply. "Interesting," said an old man standing next to the middle-aged man. He was one of the other 3 core formation cultivators. His cultivation base was the same as Dongluo Han's, at the mid-core formation stage. "So, it turns out that there's someone in Dongluo City who dares to steal things that belong to one of the 3 great sects. I'll offer 40,000 for this flag." He glared at Meng Hao as if he were already a dead man. Meng Hao was silent for a few breaths. 50,000 spirit stones. Silence fell. Even the auctioneer shook with fear. The flag was worth no more than 40,000. 50,000 was an extremely high price. Perhaps southern domain auctions reached such prices, but not here. Besides, the flag's actual function didn't match his exaggerated description. The old man's gaze turned icy. Many surrounding cultivators thought Meng Hao was specifically targeting one of the 3 major powers, the Han River sect. "If you want to make a bid like that, you'll need to show the spirit stones," said the old man, his gaze flickering. "Otherwise I could make random bids too." He looked over at the auctioneer, who hesitated for a moment and then faced Meng Hao. "Fellow Taoist," he said, "according to the rules of the auction, since you've incurred the suspicion of fellow participants in the auction, you'll need to produce the spirit stones to prove that you have them. Please, don't make things difficult for me." "How many spirit stones can I borrow with this?" asked Meng Hao, lifting up the black command medallion. 100,000, replied the auctioneer, looking back at the core formation cultivator. "I'll pay 150,000 for the flag," said the core formation cultivator coolly, cold laughter in his eyes. Given the 3 great sects, power, and recruitment invitations, 150,000 spirit stones was nothing to the Dongluo clan. What he cared about was his sect being targeted publicly. Killing intent glowed in his eyes. Meng Hao was silent for a moment and then sighed inwardly. He just wanted the flag. He wasn't targeting anybody. However, the auctioneer was now looking over at him, apparently preparing to announce the winner of this lot. "Just how important is this flag?" Meng Hao transmitted to the parrot. "Very important," was the response. "If Lord Fifth isn't mistaken, that's no flag. Whoever refined it into one is an idiot. He wrecked a precious treasure. Do you remember the man I told you about who painted a talisman that got burned? Its ash became the Black Lands. That talisman wasn't completely destroyed. Some fell to earth. This flag is a remnant of that scorched talisman. Getting it will help you gain enlightenment of that immortal's magical symbols. You'll be qualified to practice cultivation based on them. If you lack money, just steal it. What are you waiting for? Don't be scared. Have faith in Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. Steal it. That's what I did years ago. I'll help you break the platform's shield." The parrot grew more excited at the prospect. The voice of the meat jelly bell interrupted the mental conversation between the parrot and Meng Hao. "Stealing is immoral, wicked, wrong," it said solemnly. "For you two to do this is really bad." Hearing the parrot's words, Meng Hao's eyes glittered with determination. The Dongluo clan hosted the auction and he'd considered joining them. But he was one man against 10. He couldn't trust their allegiance. With no other options and the auctioneer about to speak, Meng Hao suddenly stood. The auctioneer stared in shock. Meng Hao's body flickered and shot toward the platform as the surrounding cultivators gaped. He moved too quickly for anyone to react. As he neared the platform, the parrot grew more excited and squawked, spitting an attack. It slammed into the podium with a resounding boom. The auctioneer stared as the invisible shield shattered. Meng Hao descended, grabbed the flag, and shot away. Most cultivators had no time to react, but as Meng Hao fled, two roaring howls erupted. Two old men suddenly appeared and flew to intercept him. "You dare to steal from our Dongliwo clan auction. You're looking to die. Get back here." The old men's cultivation bases exploded with late core formation power. Seeing them approach made the parrot more excited. It squawked, and a piercing sound rang out, exploding toward them. Their bodies shook and they stopped approaching. Meng Hao dodged past them, flying like a shooting star above the cultivators. A stiff wind blew across their faces as he transformed into a beam and shot skyward. The entire process took only a few breaths. From snatching the flag to disappearing, Meng Hao moved with incredible speed, natural, smooth, almost rehearsed. The observing cultivators reeled in shock. This was the first time any of them had seen an auction robbed. Even in the Black Lands, this was rare, especially when major clans hosted. All the cultivators wore strange expressions. The three great sects watched, stunned. Most shocked was the old man who'd made the top bid. He couldn't have imagined his opponent would violate the rules so brazenly. He had no money, so he stole it. The three great sects did similar things often, but in secret. They'd never dare do it publicly. Now everything the old man had said seemed a joke. Anger flooded his face. The two core formation guardians were even angrier. Their eyes blazed and veins bulged from their foreheads, clearly enraged. A buzz immediately rose up among the onlookers. Who was that? How brazen! He actually stole the item. He's far too daring. He had no spirit stone, so he stole it. Compared to him, we don't even count as Black Lands cultivators. He is the true Black Lands cultivator. We need to learn from him. Off in the distance, a small booth sat unseen by the auction floor. Inside stood Dongliwo Han, staring in shock. From this booth he could see everything. No one could see in. He'd noticed Meng Hao's lack of spirit stones and felt embarrassed. After all, Meng Hao had competed with the Han River sect, one of the three great powers the Dongliwo clan had already made an initial agreement with. Dongliwo Han had prepared a diplomatic response for any complaints. He'd never imagined Meng Hao would actually steal. What a daredevil! Another man stood next to Dongliwo Han. Gentle and refined, he sighed with praise. Dongliwo Han smiled wryly. At the same time, the old core formation cultivator roared, "You dare steal at the Dongliwo clan auction, and my things at that. The three great sects won't allow this." He flew up, followed by 10 or more who transformed into colorful beams. The other two sect groups exchanged glances and flew in pursuit. The remaining cultivators saw the auction was over and flew to follow. This chapter was sponsored by Matthew Emery, Dennis Liu, Andrew Leung, Anan, and CV. Chapter 332, The Great Khan. Meng Hao sped through the air. The parrot gripped his shoulder, flapping its wings and looking pleased. "Steal, steal, steal," it squawked. "That's the way to do it. Steal what you feel like, screw whatever you want. That's the way to live. Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When the Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife?" Meng Hao ignored the parrot. His face flushed. This was his first open theft, and it felt strange. As a scholar, he could never have robbed so brazenly. Without the parrot's urging, he never would have acted. Even with pressure, he'd hesitated. Had he been able, he'd have sold medicinal pills. But he hadn't. So he'd listened and robbed the auction. Brazen theft made him nervous but excited. He laughed bitterly. The parrot had influenced him greatly since waking. "Damned parrot," he thought. Behind him, the pursuing cultivators roared in rage. "You little bastard, you stole my stuff. Are you looking to die?" The voice echoed like thunder. Meng Hao sent out his spiritual sense and saw the pursuing cultivators whistling through the air. Their bodies glowed red, connecting them and lending them greater speed. "I won't do this again," Meng Hao thought. "Stealing doesn't suit me. Next time I'll let him buy it, then take it later, avoid this attention." He sent his spiritual sense out again. Of the three core formation cultivators, he focused on the pockmarked old man at late core formation. He ignored the rest. The pockmarked old man hadn't spoken. He observed everything with cold eyes, putting pressure on Meng Hao. Without the blood immortal mask, he'd be difficult to defeat. He looked at the parrot. This whole disaster is your fault. What are you scared of? Said the parrot proudly. Screw them to death. Suddenly, it lifted its claw, placing a black band around its head to cover one eye. Then it flew off his shoulder. It squawked and black fire engulfed its body, growing rapidly. In an instant it was 20 or 30 meters tall, lowering its head like an elite death squad member. With a cry, it attacked. Meng Hao's eyes widened. The parrot advanced and slammed into the pursuing cultivators in an instant. A boom rang out. The red glow collapsed. Some coughed up blood. The three-core formation cultivators scattered. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. Without hesitation, he shot forward. In an instant, he was in front of the early core formation cultivator. He lifted his fist and struck out. The man's mouth twisted into a vicious smile. He made an incantation sign with both hands, and immediately a spinning vortex shot out. It was black, and lightning crackled within. Furthermore, terrifying shrieks could be heard, along with a multitude of spirit faces, which shot toward Meng Hao, apparently intent on consuming him. Meng Hao gave a cold snort. Without hesitation, he landed his punch. A boom filled the air. The faces twisted and screamed and then collapsed into pieces. The lightning disintegrated and the vortex broke up into pieces. This magical technique couldn't stand up in the least to Meng Hao's fist. Before the middle-aged cultivator could react, Meng Hao's fist passed through them all and slammed into his chest. Boom! The man toppled backward, blood spraying from his mouth and out from his back. His body shook as a massive hole appeared in his chest. He only had time to look down at it before his entire body exploded. Meng Hao didn't pause for a moment. His right hand immediately began to form an incantation. In front of him was the old mid-core formation cultivator, who brimmed with killing intent. He waved his sleeve, and 9 pagodas appeared around him, upon the surfaces of which were carved the images of bizarre creatures. Suddenly, countless phantom creatures sprang into being around the pagodas, filling the sky. They immediately charged toward Meng Hao. However, it was at this moment that Meng Hao cried, "Eighth demon sealing hex." His finger fell, and immediately, ghost images sprung up everywhere from everything. It was as if a second phantom world existed on top of the current one. They folded in onto the old core formation cultivator, causing his expression to flicker. His cultivation base was immediately locked down, as if he had been removed from the world, shoved alive out of heaven and earth. What magic is this? His mind spun as the cold-faced Meng Hao approached. His fist descended, then another, then a third. By the time the third punch fell, the 9 pagodas had been smashed into smithereens. In the blink of an eye, Meng Hao's fist was speeding toward the old man's forehead. Suddenly, an intense feeling of danger filled Meng Hao's head. Without a moment's hesitation, he transformed the fist into a claw and snatched the mid-core formation old man. Meng Hao shoved the man in front of himself and then pushed, using the immobilized old man to propel himself backward. As he lifted his head, he saw an orange light shining out from the face of the pock-marked old cultivator. It flew through the air to the spot he had just been in, which was now occupied by the mid-core formation cultivator. Suddenly, the glowing light stopped. That orange light was what had just caused the sense of crisis to appear in Meng Hao's mind. He laughed coldly as he fell back. The parrot shot over like lightning, and together they flew off into the distance. "I'm the patriarch of the Han River sect," said the pock-faced old man, his face grim. "Let's see how you try to escape me." The mid-core formation cultivator's cultivation base was now recovering, but his face was pale white and he looked at Meng Hao with fear. His killing intent, though, was stronger than ever. The group of cultivators once again began to pursue Meng Hao, this time, with the pock-faced old man in the lead. Meng Hao's expression was calm. He had the good luck charm in his hand still. It was full of cracks, and he wasn't sure how many times he could use it before it completely disintegrated. Unfortunately, he had discovered long ago that he could not duplicate the good luck charm. However, he would still use it without hesitating if the situation demanded. "Hold on," said the parrot. "Don't use that thing. I know what it is. Why waste the excellent opportunity we have right now?" As Meng Hao sped along, he looked at the parrot who was clutching tightly to his shoulder. "What are you talking about?" The parrot's eyes gleamed as it said, "Don't you want to get rich? Don't you want to get a bunch of treasures? Don't you want to become the wealthiest person under the heavens?" Meng Hao blinked a few times. Ever since he was young, he had dreamed of being rich. For the parrot to mention such a thing at this moment left him feeling a little bit suspicious. He sent out his spiritual sense to glance at the people pursuing him. Given his own current speed, He guessed that it wouldn't be long before the Han River sect cultivators caught up with him. Lord Fifth cares nothing for riches. Lord Fifth loves fur and feathers. Keep everything but promise to find more beautiful creatures for Lord Fifth, ones like the scarlet peacock. Without waiting for an answer, it lifted its claw and shook it. Ultimate vexation, get the hell out here. A face appeared on the bell attached to the parrot's claw. It looked incensed. I know what you're planning. This time I won't do it. I have principles. The parrot yawned. Remember the fatso who attacked you that year? I'll tell you where he is. Its expression was one of complete disdain, as if the meat jelly's consent was foregone. As soon as it heard the parrot's words, the meat jelly's face appeared to twist with indecision. That damned fatso, I hate him. It was with complete goodwill that I spent 10,000 years converting him. Then he repaid my kindness with enmity. Fine, I need to finish converting him. For that reason I'll help you one more time, but only this once. And this is the last time, really. As the meat jelly chattered, an impatient look appeared on the parrot's face. It kicked its claw one more time and the meat jelly flew off. Bitch, will you ever shut up? All right, turn into some spirit stones for Lord Fifth. I want 1,000,000, okay? When the parrot finished speaking, the meat jelly let out a growl and then, to Meng Hao's shock, suddenly exploded. The sound of the explosion immediately caught the guarded attention of the Han River sect cultivators. Even the pock-faced old man suddenly stopped moving. However, a moment later, vast amounts of shining, glittering spirit stones appeared. They looked like rain as they descended from the sky all over the place. They were dazzlingly bright in the sunlight, and a thick spiritual energy emanated out from them, completely shocking. The amazing, brilliant sight of it caused all of the nearby cultivators to begin to pant. 1,000,000 spirit stones, each beyond average quality. Seeing them float down caused the Black Land's cultivators to charge forward recklessly. Even the pockmarked old man's eyes widened. 1,000,000 spirit stones was a vast number to him. Behind him were the other two sect members, and behind them nearly hundreds of other cultivators. All rushed forward with wide eyes. Meng Hao's eyes glittered, and he transformed into a beam of light, shooting off like a star. He left behind all the people suddenly enthralled by riches. They lost their minds, not thinking why Meng Hao had so many spirit stones. If he did, why rob the auction? Meng Hao was torn. He couldn't believe he'd never thought to have the meat jelly turn into spirit stones. "Heh heh," chuckled the parrot with an arrogant, sinister smile. "Steal away. The more you steal, the better. Years ago, I forced ultimate vexation to use this method on the 8 Taping Dao patriarchs to rob them blind." Chapter 333, Conning the Whole Way. 1,000,000 spirit stones appeared, brilliant sunlight reflecting off them. A crazed frenzy rose among hundreds of cultivators. The cultivators in the back, who'd come to watch the excitement, went wild. Their eyes reddened as they used every technique to increase speed, scattering to grab spirit stones. The Han River sect was closest. The pockmarked old man hesitated. Something seemed off. He thought back to the auction and Meng Hao's lack of spirit stones, but he couldn't tell if these were illusory or real. Seeing his disciples breathe heavily, he gritted his teeth, abandoned the chase and went after the spirit stones, trying to gather as many as possible. The other Han River sect disciples charged madly. The other two sect disciples fought for supremacy. Hundreds of cultivators flitted in all directions after spirit stones, fighting and plundering. "Damn it, that's my spirit stone." The guy who robbed the auction tossed out these spirit stones to save his own skin. They don't belong to anybody. First come, first serve. The sound of explosions echoed out. 1,000,000 spirit stones seemed like a lot, but considering hundreds of cultivators were fighting over them, they were divided up very quickly. It was without hesitation that the cultivators tossed them into their bags of holding. Suddenly, their excitement faded and they looked toward Meng Hao. If he'd thrown out 1,000,000 spirit stones just to buy time, he must have even more. A strange light appeared in the Han River sect cultivators' eyes. They'd snatched perhaps 200,000 spirit stones, the most of all. The pockmarked old man was determined. He knew the spirit stones were real. He'd examined one carefully. With a hearty laugh, he shot in pursuit of Meng Hao, his disciples following. Almost all the other cultivators did the same. A few hesitated, worried they'd be too greedy. Some considered leaving. Everyone had gotten some spirit stones and profited. Some surreptitiously examined their bags to count their acquisitions. It was then that a flabbergasted gasp could be heard. Where are the spirit stones? I just took about 10,000, where did they go? Mine are gone too, what's going on? Others who overheard such remarks immediately looked down to check their own bags of holding, whereupon their faces instantly fell. My spirit stones are gone. Impossible. I stole at least 8,000 just now. Something fishy is going on. Cries rose mixed with moans. As they checked their bags, all the cultivators' faces went deathly pale. Some shook, veins popping from their foreheads. Intense rage and insanity poured from their eyes. My magical items are gone. Damn it, my medicinal elixir. There's none left at all in my bag of holding. Ah, my bag of holding has nothing in it. What's going on? It's totally empty. Even the magical item I just bought at the auction is gone. As word spread, the cries grew louder. The pockmarked old man looked down to his bag. His face went gray as ash. He lifted his head to the sky and howled desolately. His body shook, smoke rising from his head. Veins shot through his eyes, radiating vicious frenzy. How could he not go mad? His heart bled as if ripped open. His bag had contained hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, now vanished. All his medicinal elixir, magical items, pills, everything was gone. His bag was completely cleaned out. Years of savings, half the Han River sex wealth, all gone. The pock-faced patriarch howled. Behind him, the patriarch from one of the other great sects was shaking and howling madly. His bag of holding was equally empty. The bags of holding of all the hundreds of cultivators were completely empty. Someone had inexplicably removed their contents, leaving behind not a sound or hint of how it had occurred. That heaven-damned bandit, I won't rest until he's dead. These words came out even before Patriarch Pockmarks could say anything similar. They came from a rubicund old man whose entire body was quivering. The insanity in his eyes outmatched that of Patriarch Pockmarks. This was the patriarch from one of the other clans. The source of his madness was the fact that just before the auction, he had filled his bag of holding with 1,000,000 spirit stones. That was the price he had demanded from the Dongluo clan to join them. In addition to the spirit stones, there had been magical techniques from the Dongluo clan which he had long thirsted for. Now, though, they were all gone. How could he not go mad? These Black Lands cultivators weren't stupid. If they couldn't figure out that Meng Hao was the culprit, then their years of cultivation had been spent in vain. And the root of the problem was those spirit stones. Hundreds of cultivators were now in a rage. Their eyes were red, and they used all the power they could muster to shoot at top speed after Meng Hao. Revenge must be had. However, there was no sign of Meng Hao. Fearing that he would escape completely, the hundreds of cultivators used a variety of methods to call upon friends. Some arranged for people up ahead to block Meng Hao. Others contacted people from other power groups or sects up ahead, requesting either direct assistance or to borrow jade slips or spirit stones. Of course, none of them realized that Meng Hao hadn't actually conned them. The parrot had. However, it didn't matter. Meng Hao and the parrot had both done such things many times in the past. When you think about how many people Meng Hao had conned throughout his time in the cultivation world, well, you could say that he had conned people the whole way. As a tiny example, there was a certain group of discarnate souls back in the Black Civ sect who Meng Hao could send into instant misery if he felt like it. 1. Meng Hao secretly administered his own blood to the possessed cultivators of the Black Civ sect. Since he is a demon sealer, he can basically kill them at any time. This happened in chapter 258. As Meng Hao whistled through the air, the meat jelly reclined lazily on top of his head, looking quite arrogant. This is wrong. It coughed up dozens of magical items. This is immoral. It burped up a vast quantity of spirit stones. This is too wicked. In the blink of an eye, it spat up mouthful after mouthful of bottles of medicinal elixir and hundreds of jade slips. You two are going to turn me into an evildoer. With a sigh, the meat jelly coughed up some more items. Meng Hao stuffed the belongings of hundreds of cultivators into his cosmos bag, only it was large enough. Seeing such a vast collection of items caused Meng Hao's mouth and tongue to go dry. The sight of more than 1,000,000 spirit stones caused his eyes to shine. Then there were the jade slips, which surely contained a vast array of information. As for the magical items, none of them particularly caught Meng Hao's attention. However, if he sold them, he would be able to make a heap of spirit stones. Then there was the random collection of other items, one of which happened to catch Meng Hao's eye. It was a book, plated in something that looked like gold. It consisted of 3 pages and 3 illustrations. The first illustration depicted 10 swords arranged, so that their tips pointed outward to form something that looked like a lotus flower. The second illustration depicted 100 swords, formed together to make 10 lotus flowers which were arranged into a large ring. The third illustration depicted 1,000 swords arranged into 100 lotus flowers, creating a massive formation. They circled around each other, forming 10 layers which all seemed to be revolving in different directions. The mere sight of it was dazzling. A sword formation, thought Meng Hao. He glanced at it for a moment, then put it aside. He continued flying on, heart thumping. He really had struck it rich this time, having stolen the wealth of hundreds of cultivators. It's too bad. He was just whispering this sentence in his heart when the parrot next to him let out a sigh and spoke out loud exactly what he was thinking. "It's too bad there weren't very many people," said the parrot. "If there were more, then this transaction would have truly been profitable." "Don't even think of trying to get me to do it again," blubbered the meat jelly. With a pop, it again transformed into a bell and attached itself to the parrot's foot. Meng Hao looked at the parrot, and the parrot looked back at him. One man, one bird. In this instant, seeing the light in each other's eyes caused them both to experience the feeling of mutual friendship. "From now on, you are Lord Fifth's master," said the parrot, its voice sincere. "In the future, I'll find some more fur and feathers for you." After exchanging these words, the man and bird looked down at the meat jelly bell. The meat jelly quivered and opened its eyes, as if it had just felt something very cold. After opening its eyes, it saw Meng Hao staring off into the sky and the parrot looking down at the earth below. "You're both evildoers," said the meat jelly loudly. "Wow, the weather is great today," said Meng Hao, looking up at the beautiful white clouds, seemingly entranced, as if he'd never seen them before. Said the parrot, looking down at the ground with an expression of rapture. "The flowers down there are beautiful. They almost look like they're covered with feathers." Soon 3 days had passed. Meng Hao proceeded onward at top speed the entire time. Behind him, the hundreds of cultivators stretched out in a line as they pursued him, based on the level of their cultivation base. Their eyes were filled with killing intent. Their hatred for him had not quite reached the point where they refused to live under the same sky with him, but it was close. Black Land's cultivators were used to living in constant danger, and as such, usually keep most of their belongings in their bags of holding. That was especially the case when going to an auction. You could even say that it was at the very moment when their bags of holding were fullest that they met Meng Hao. As such, their hatred toward him was incredibly intense. This was especially true of the 3 great sects. The Patriarch Rubicon was the most frenzied of them all. He had taken the lead position in the group. After him was Patriarch Pockmarks. Their eyes billowed with venomous killing intent as they glared ahead toward Meng Hao. They couldn't wait to tear him to pieces and eat him alive. "Little bastard, I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if I have to." "You're dead," screamed Patriarch Rubicon, gnashing his teeth as he thought of his spirit stones. His heart bled. This chapter was sponsored by Damien Sarizin, Alec Robertson, Dweepa Haramurti, and Brett Flowers. Chapter 334, Celestial Spell Formation. "Look, you old fart, you started chasing me." Meng Hao's eyes flickered coldly as he proceeded. Patriarch Rubicon whistled toward him. The man snorted coldly and increased speed. "Stealing auction items is a high crime. You use depraved tricks to steal our wealth. You're a disgrace to the Black Lands, death penalty." Behind him, Patriarch Pockmark's eyes went dark. The rest of the cultivators stared at Meng Hao with intense killing intent. "Your cultivation base is at late core formation, yet after 3 days you can't catch an early core formation cultivator like me. How do you have the face?" Meng Hao increased his speed. "You sure know how to talk. I'll help you understand a life worse than death." Patriarch Rubicon's face turned purplish-black. His speed increased several times as he shot toward Meng Hao, ready to catch him in breaths. "Greedy to the bones," said Meng Hao coolly. "Do you have any face?" The parrot opened its mouth, and a gale-force wind burst forth with a shocking roar. Meng Hao's speed increased. Facing up against the fierce wind, Patriarch Rubicon and the rest of the hundreds of cultivators behind him could do nothing except howl in rage as their speed decreased. Currently, none of them had any magical items. Some of them were able to use secret techniques or core chi to close some of the distance between them and Meng Hao. However, a single breath from the parrot would immediately increase the gap. Therefore, no matter what they did to increase their speed, it did no good and they were unable to catch up with Meng Hao. During the 3 days, their rage only continued to grow more and more intense. Seeing the distance between them and Meng Hao grow once again, the killing intent in Patriarch Rubicon's heart spread to fill his entire body. The Patriarch Pockmarks was exactly the same, as were all the 100 cultivators behind them. After 3 days, Meng Hao could tell from landmarks he was nearing his cave. "Are you sure your idea will work?" Meng Hao asked, frowning. "Of course," replied the parrot boastfully. "Lead these people into our lair, go practice cultivation and leave everything to Lord Fifth." It patted its chest proudly. "The more people, the more chaotic the aura, and the easier it is to delay the heavenly tribulation." A frown remained on Meng Hao's face. During his 3 days of travel, he had discussed with the parrot the matter of delaying the heavenly tribulation. He knew that the method was a type of deception, using a variety of miscellaneous auras to confuse heaven and earth. It was like spreading a gauze over the face of the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, these pursuing cultivators, more than 100 of them, would actually be of some use to Meng Hao and the parrot. However, as to whether the technique would succeed, and as to whether the parrot would really be able to hold off the crowd, well, Meng Hao wasn't completely certain. Even as he was thinking about these things, his eyes suddenly flashed. He looked ahead of him and his eyes narrowed. There he could see a dozen or so beams of prismatic light whistling toward him. He was being blocked in. There was a blockade up ahead and people pursuing him from behind. The people up ahead merely had to delay him for a bit, and then the pursuers would arrive. He was encircled. Behind him, Patriarch Rubicon and many of the others all of a sudden looked very excited. Obviously, they had used various methods to call for help earlier, and the result was this group of people up ahead preparing to block Meng Hao's way. Among the approaching cultivators was a middle-aged man of the mid-core formation stage. Core chi floated above his head, but it appeared to be a muddle of colors. Clearly, the man had just recently cultivated it. Furthermore, he obviously had a mixed core. His expression was grim as he sized up Meng Hao. Then, he performed an incantation sign, which caused the core chi to transform into the shape of the head of a wild beast. It roared as it shot forward. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever as he lifted his hand, and then pointed a finger down toward the ground. Righteous bestowal! A strange light flickered in his eyes. In an instant, ghost images sprung up from the ground everywhere. Now he could see wisps of demonic chi which were invisible to everyone else. They shot toward Meng Hao and then began to circle around his body. The invisible pulsating aura which surrounded Meng Hao coalesced into a phantom. It was blurry, but after taking shape, it emanated Meng Hao's aura. Next, he waved his hand toward the group of cultivators up ahead, causing the phantom to shoot toward them. Meng Hao didn't want to split his attention to control the phantom, so as soon as it neared the group of cultivators, he said, "Burst." The phantom immediately exploded. A huge boom rocked heaven and earth. What everyone else saw was Meng Hao simply pointing toward the group cultivators, after which blood sprayed from their mouths. A few people even directly blew up. The face of the core formation cultivator fell, and he retreated 7 or 8 paces. However, he was powerless to fight back against what seemed like an invisible gale-force wind that slammed into him and sent him tumbling backward. Astonishment filled his face as he was knocked head over heels, blood spraying out of his mouth. Before, he had assumed that even if his opponent was extraordinary in some way, he was with a group of a dozen or more people. Furthermore, all he had to do was delay him, which should be no problem. And yet Meng Hao had used an unknown technique to simply point a finger and then unleash some sort of incredible power. The man's heart felt cold as he watched Meng Hao approach. He didn't dare to do anything further to stop him. Meng Hao shot forward, immediately passing the scattered group of cultivators who had been attempting to block his path. This scene caused the 100 or so pursuing cultivators to feel completely shocked. All of them slowed, hesitating. However, when they thought about their empty bags of holding and the expression's strength in numbers, then their killing intent once again billowed up. Not a single one retreated. They immediately shot in pursuit of Meng Hao, stringing out in a line that resembled a sharp arrow. Time passed. After 3 or 4 more breaths from the parrot, Meng Hao finally caught sight of the short mountain and the immortal's cave. He also saw the group of more than 100 cultivators living around the mountain. When they caught sight of him and his pursuers, looks of vigilance and uneasiness appeared on their faces. The instant they began to feel uneasy, the parrot's shrill voice blared out, "Okay, children, Lord Fifth is here with some guests. Get in formation." At the same time, Meng Hao transformed into a beam of light which shot directly toward the fissure in the side of the mountain. As he did, the parrot loosened its grip on his shoulder and flew into the air. The meat jelly bell attached to its foot made dainty clinking sounds. When the more than 100 local cultivators heard the parrot's voice, tremors ran through their bodies. Gritting their teeth, they immediately rose to their feet. Then, they began to run in a particular order and fashion, coiling around the short mountain as they did so. A strange expression appeared on Meng Hao's face as he used spiritual sense to watch all of this. He thought back to what the parrot had called a celestial spell formation, and all the running training it had made the cultivators do. He hesitated for a moment, then clenched his jaw and sat down cross-legged. He pulled out the medicinal plants needed to make the perfect gold core pill and began to concoct. He would make the perfect gold core pill, consume it, and then replace his violet core with a gold core. Furthermore, he would go all out, breaking through from the early core formation stage into the mid-core formation stage, all using his perfect gold core. After that happens, I will delay the heavenly tribulation and cultivate core chi. If all goes smoothly, then when I leave this immortal's cave. Meng Hao's eyes glowed with a frigid light. I'll help them to experience true deadly pursuit. He took a deep breath and then produced the copper mirror, which he used to duplicate some of the medicinal plants he needed. Before, he would have had to be very careful, considering his lack of spirit stones. Furthermore, using the ultra-high-grade spirit stones would have been far too distressing. Now, however, he had more than 1,000,000 spirit stones in his bag of holding. Therefore, he felt free to use them without being miserly. In addition to that, Meng Hao felt supremely confident in his Tao of alchemy, far more so than Chu Yuyan had been back when she concocted the perfect foundation pill. Using the mysterious legacy technique of the East Pill Division, along with his alchemic flame, Meng Hao was more than 70% confident that he would succeed. Outside the Immortal's cave, Patriarch Rubicon, Patriarch Pockmarks, and all the others approached, faces filled with murder. They saw Meng Hao disappear into the short mountain, the detestable parrot flying around squawking, and the group of cultivators running in circles around the mountain. All of it caused them to gape in shock for a moment, and then begin laughing uproariously. As more people arrived, they too looked at the cultivators running in circles and laughed out loud. What are these people doing? Have they gone insane? Are they jogging for exercise? What kind of cultivators are they? They're really losing face for the Black Lands. The sneering ridicule of the cultivators who had been pursuing Meng Hao caused embarrassed looks to appear on the faces of the cultivators on the ground. However, they didn't dare to stop running. This was the only celestial magic that the parrot had taught them, which drew its power from people running. According to what the parrot said, this technique was incredibly, unbelievably amazing. It was supposedly the ultimate spell formation in all heaven and earth. "Come, come," cried the parrot excitedly as it soared through the air. "Everyone put your voices together." The more than 100 local cultivators hesitated for a moment. However, nearly a year of practicing had created a virtual instinct. As soon as one person cried it out, everyone joined together to shout. "Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When the Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife?" Their voices joined together and echoed out in powerful waves. As the sound rose up, so did a wind. It was hard to tell whether the wind was started because of the running or because of their shouting. In any case, the wind caused the area 50 kilometers around the Immortal's cave to suddenly become blurry. The blurriness was faint, so faint, in fact, that no one noticed at all, not even Patriarch Rubicon, who was of the late core formation stage, or the others of similar level. "Kill everyone," cried Patriarch Pockmarks. "Don't even leave a blade of grass left alive." His words floated through the air lightly but were filled with shocking killing intent. As they rang out, the Han River sect disciples behind him, as well as many of the other random cultivators, transformed into prismatic beams. They shot forward, their faces twisted viciously, their killing intent billowing. It was with ultimate derision that they prepared to vent their venomous hatred of Meng Hao. Chapter 335, Valiant. The Han River sect disciples descended with killing rage and taunting laughter, eyes beaming with viciousness. They neared the 100 cultivators running on the ground. "Children, don't look, ignore them," cried the parrot as it flew back and forth, the bell ringing. "Come, join me in your loudest voice." The more than 100 cultivators cried out again. The cultivators pursuing Meng Hao from Dongluo City grew closer. As they neared, their expressions flickered as they felt a wind picking up. The wind brushed against their faces, rippling their clothes, blowing their hair. It pushed their bodies about. The charging cultivators were forced to stop. Their clothes whipped violently, their hair in disarray, their expressions filling with shock. A vortex of wind spread from beneath the running cultivators' feet. As it extended, it pushed back the incoming cultivators, blocking them. In an instant, it changed from a gentle breeze into a screaming gale. The screaming wind mixed with the cries of the cultivators to form a power that could rend the very heavens. The cultivators from Dongluo City retreated in astonishment. Some were too slow and were caught by the cyclone. Blood sprayed from their mouths, their organs were broken. A dozen weak-base cultivators began to scream. Their cries drifted with the wind, piercing the onlookers' ears. Their clothing was ripped to shreds. Their hair turned gray, their skin peeling off as if punished by 1,000 cuts. Blood and flesh flew within the screaming wind, in a blink. The skin and muscle of the dozen cultivators were flayed off, turning them to skeletons. Cracking sounds rang out as the skeletons smashed to pieces and vanished into the wind. The pursuing cultivators' scalps went numb. Their faces shone with horror and disbelief. Their breathing came in ragged gasps as they backed up. No one dared proceed forward, and silence filled the air except for the wind's cries and the cultivators' voices melded into it. Have faith in the Lord. Fifth, gain eternal life. During this moment of relative silence, Patriarch Rubicon gave a cold snort. From behind him walked out a cultivator of the mid-core formation stage. Another mid-core formation cultivator appeared at the side of Patriarch Pockmarks, his jaw clenched. A third mid-core formation cultivator appeared along with a patriarch who was obviously from the third of the three great sects. This man was tall and well-built. After he stepped forward, the three-core formation cultivators turned into beams of prismatic light that shot forward. They appeared intent on piercing through the massive, foggy whirlwind to destroy the more than 100 cultivators within. However, as soon as they neared the wind, their faces changed immediately. They emitted howls as core chi appeared above their heads, taking various forms as they charged into the foggy wind. They had advanced nearly halfway to the 100 cultivators, roughly 30 meters away, when a gigantic phantom figure appeared within the whirlwind. It was formed from wind itself, no less than 30 meters tall. Its facial features were indistinct. Only its strapping frame and illusory clothes rippling on its body were visible. As it appeared, it ran with an indistinct howling sound. It seemed not to notice the three incoming cultivators. The killing intent of the three men flickered as they performed incantation gestures. Core chi exploded outward, transforming one into a stretch of sandy soil, another into a vast array of flying swords, and the third into a painting of mountains and rivers. The core chi enveloped the area, sweeping directly toward the gigantic phantom. "Shatter!" cried the three men, their voices cold. However, their core chi passed directly through the giant phantom, as if it were completely illusory. This caused the three men to gape in astonishment. The phantom turned and barreled directly toward them. The phantom was supposedly illusory, yet it caused the three men to tremble. Their faces turned ashen and they coughed up blood. Looking astonished, they were about to retreat when a second, third, fourth phantom appeared. In an instant, 10 giant phantoms filled the wind. All charged toward the three men, who began to retreat. The Han River Sect Core Formation cultivator was slower. Before he could retreat, one phantom was upon him. Eyes filled with viciousness, he bit his tongue and spit blood into the air. He passed his hands through it, creating a blood-colored mark. He pushed against the blood-colored mark, causing it to ignite and then transform into a massive blood-colored skull. With a roar of rage, it shot toward the approaching phantom. Instead of slamming into each other, the blood-colored skull passed directly through the phantom, and then flew past it through 8 more phantoms before finally dissipating. Despair filled the Han River Sect cultivator's face as the first phantom slammed into him. Blood sprayed from his mouth with a blood-curdling scream. "Patriarch, save me!" he cried in fear. Patriarch Pockmark's face fell. He was about to charge when his eyes narrowed. He felt he didn't dare charge forward and retreated instead. He'd caught sight of dozens of phantoms approaching at high speed. Their approach shook the ground as if giants trampled the earth. Howls mixed with blood-curdling shrieks as the Han River Sect Core Formation cultivator was trampled to death. The hearts of all the outside cultivators pounded, regardless of cultivation base. The foggy wind grew blurry, their expressions held no hint of derision. Instead, their faces were filled with terror. People began to consider fleeing, but another foggy wind had appeared behind them, surrounding them and cutting off escape. These cultivators had pursued Meng Hao with menacing viciousness, but now their hearts grew cold. This was even more so when they noticed that inside the foggy wind ahead and behind were dozens of phantom figures. The figures were running, causing the ground to heave. It was easy to imagine how quickly they would be injured or even killed were they to be struck by the phantoms. After all, the phantoms had just trampled a mid-core formation cultivator to death in an instant. This filled the other cultivators' hearts with dread. It didn't take long for them to realize that the phantoms running through the wind were actually none other than the more than 100 cultivators they had previously derided. As they circled the area, their voices grew louder. Have faith in the Lord Fifth, gain eternal life. When the Lord Fifth appears, who dares to cause strife? The shocking sound of the voices shook the earth, causing everything to tremble and the other cultivators' faces to drain of blood. What spell formation is this? The words were not spoken by Patriarch Rubicon, whose heart trembled with fear as he watched the foggy wind grow less clear, nor by Patriarch Pockmarks, who stood with an unsightly expression. Instead, they were spoken by another cultivator. He was short with a very large head, standing out little in the crowd. Even Meng Hao hadn't noticed him. When the big-headed cultivator spoke out, looks of reverence appeared on the faces of many of the surrounding onlookers, who stepped back politely. Patriarch Pockmarks was from the Han River sect. Patriarch Rubicon was from the Sky High sect. And this big-headed cultivator was the patriarch of the third great sect, the Talisman sect. His cultivation base was at the late core formation stage. His methods were ruthless, and few people in Dongluo City would dare to provoke him. Furthermore, he was known to be very skilled with spell formations. As he stepped forward and looked out at the foggy wind, he slapped his bag of holding to produce a jade bracelet. Patriarch Rubicon and Patriarch Pockmarks looked at Patriarch Bighead's bag of holding with bitter smiles. They said nothing, but it was obvious that he hadn't been part of the Great Spirit Stone theft incident. Clearly, his bag of holding was completely intact. Patriarch Bighead stared down at the bracelet, its murky surface showing over 100 dots of light moving to and fro. He studied it, then took a deep breath. His eyes shone with amazement. What a splendid celestial spell formation, he said. This is legendary magic from ancient times, lost to the world, and yet here it is, employed before our eyes. This celestial spell formation is based on humans. Ancient cultivators used powerful corporeal bodies to form the spell's eye. The more people in the formation, the more power it employs. The wind has the potential to slay immortals. Those phantoms are human celestials. Patriarch Bighead's scalp was numb. He turned to look at the foggy wind behind them, his eyes glittering brightly. However, there are only 100 people powering this particular spell. Furthermore, these are not ancient cultivators and their cultivation bases are varied and weak. In turn, that means this spell formation can be broken. What is your choice, to break through the wind in front of us and slay the people therein, or break through the wind behind us, retreat and then come up with another plan? He looked at Patriarch Pockmarks and Patriarch Rubicon, his eyes gleaming. The three of them exchanged glances, whereupon their eyes filled with determination. I don't want much, said Patriarch Bighead with a smile, his eyes filled with avarice. Just that parrot. I want my belongings back, plus half of the contents of that guy's bag of holding, said Patriarch Pockmarks, his voice grim. The other half goes to me, said Patriarch Rubicon, his killing intent flickering, along with his life. This chapter was sponsored by Edwin Wanjohi, Christian Selly, Lance Chang, CV, Emil Suadikani, Lim Derrick, and Jacob Hare. Chapter 336, League of Hellfire. A brutal glow flickered in the three cultivators' eyes. Patriarch Bighead laughed heartily, then slapped his bag to produce what appeared to be an ordinary grain of rice. It was plump, glossy, and white, at first glance appetizing. The eyes of Patriarch Rubicon and Patriarch Pockmarks narrowed. This object was pried from an ancient giant locust's mouth, said Patriarch Bighead. Passed down through generations, I refined it anew. It can break any spell formation in heaven and earth. He waved his hand and waves of rice grains flew out in sheets toward the foggy wind. The pure white rice instantly began to turn dark. It only took the space of a few breaths for it to become pure black. Patriarch Bighead gasped, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. His body trembled and he began to shrink as if he were being withered. Veins of blood appeared in his eyes. Fellow Taoists, I need power from your cultivation bases. He lifted his right hand, and Patriarch Rubicon and Patriarch Pockmarks immediately began to transmit power from their cultivation bases. Patriarch Bighead absorbed it without hesitation. Other surrounding cultivators heard the words uttered by Patriarch Bighead. Patriarch Pockmarks glanced at the remaining Han River sect disciples, and soon a mutual understanding was reached by everyone. Power poured out from the cultivation bases of the hundreds of surrounding cultivators. Patriarch Bighead turned into a black hole as he sucked in the power. His eyes turned bright red, and he raised his hand straight up into the air and extended a finger. Luminous rice, he said, his voice hoarse. Instantly, the blackened sheets of rice began to emit blinding rays of light, which shot out, forming together into a vast sheet of brightness. The light illuminated the surrounding darkness of the foggy wind, and if you didn't look too closely, everything suddenly didn't seem as mysterious as before. Patriarch Big Head bit down on the tip of his tongue and spit out a mouthful of blood. The glowing blood, which was filled with the power lent by the surrounding cultivators, melded into the shining rice grains within the foggy wind. Heavenly Army Transformation. A powerful boom filled the air, and the surrounding cultivators instantly saw a vast array of emaciated figures appear within the fog. They were short, about half the size of an average person, and did not appear to be any sort of heavenly army. In fact, they looked more like evil spirits that had just crawled out of hell. All of the grains of rice transformed into such evil spirits. In the blink of an eye, there were hundreds of them. The bodies of the evil spirits were indistinct, as if they couldn't quite fully manifest into the world. Even still, a cruel and bloodthirsty viciousness emanated out from them. Patriarch Bighead's face was pale as he retreated a few steps, clasped hands and bowed. Heavenly Army, I beseech you to break this formation. The more than 100 people inside are my sacrifices to you, O Heavenly Army. Up ahead, the fog roiled as the massive phantoms began to slam into the evil spirits. Shocking explosions rang out. Inside the spell formation, the parrot's eyes went wide with both fear and irritation. Damn it, that's an immortal divine ability that's supposed to turn rice into soldiers. Who was it that changed it into something that summons evil spirits? That's not something a core formation cultivator could pull off, and it's also not a technique from the 9th mountain. That's something from the League of Hellfire from the 4th mountain. Somehow that guy managed to get his hands onto an incomplete legacy. Damn it, everybody else can pretty much ignore these evil spirits, but considering the current state of my body, it could cause some big problems if I ran into them. For the first time, the parrot looked somewhat nervous. So annoying, it said, taking in a deep breath. Meanwhile, back in the Immortal's cave in the short mountain, Meng Hao's eyes glowed brightly as he looked at the black pill furnace he held in his hand. On the surface of the pill furnace was the face of a youth, which looked back at Meng Hao with an expression that said it would never yield. This was none other than the pill furnace he had acquired in the Violet Furnace Lord Trial by Fire. 1. He acquired the black pill furnace in chapter 281. However, from the moment he had acquired it, it had showed no sign that it would ever submit to him. At the moment, Meng Hao looked at it with brow furrowed. Finally, he gave a cold snort and performed an incantation with his right hand. Then he pushed his finger down onto the face of the youth. It twisted and filled with a look of pain. Meng Hao was currently surrounded by countless threads of qi, visible only to himself. They swirled toward him from all directions to pour into the pill furnace. If you still won't give in, fine, said Meng Hao coolly. A pill furnace with a spirit inside is a bit better, but I'm already used to the kind without. Meng Hao pushed down, and the demonic qi in the area poured in, transforming into a cage. The cage surrounded the image of the youth, and then transformed into something that looked like a net, which completely suppressed it. The youth screamed, filled with anxiety. However, the scream was weak. If I want to let you live, then you can continue to exist. If I want you dead, it will take a mere thought. Meng Hao's voice was cold, and even as he spoke the words, the net tightened, thoroughly restricting the youth in all aspects. The blackness of the pill furnace began to grow dim, to be replaced by a violet color. Glancing at the pill furnace, Meng Hao waved his right hand, whereupon a vast quantity of medicinal plants emerged. His left hand flickered like a ghost as he began to catalyze, extract fluids, make adjustments, and feed ingredients into the pill furnace. A flame appeared in his right hand. It was not red, but violet. This flame was none other than the East Pill ever-burning flame, the legacy alchemic flame stoked by his violet core. This ever-burning alchemic flame would allow him to employ the spirit summoning incantation. 2. The spirit summoning incantation was one of the 3 gifts given to him by Grandmaster Pill Demon in chapter 294. Just when Meng Hao was about to begin concocting, the anxious voice of the parrot was transmitted into his mind. Meng Hao immediately sent out his spiritual sense, whereupon he saw the fog in the outside world, as well as the hundreds of vicious evil spirits. He was silent for a moment, and then looked at the pill furnace. His eyes filled with determination as well as a cold glow. I don't care what price you have to pay, give me 3 days, he transmitted back. Then he severed his connection with the outside world and began to concoct. 3 days, thought the parrot, a feverish light shining in its eyes. A flicker could be seen at its feet and the meat jelly appeared. Lord Fifth gets it B\*TCH. How annoying. I never imagined that someone would have a Hellfire legacy, even though it's not complete it still could restrain Lord Fifth. The parrot eyed the meat jelly earnestly. 3 days. You need to cooperate with me for 3 days. If Meng Hao isn't finished by that time, then we'll just have to flee. Only on rare occasions would the meat jelly not be talkative. However, as soon as it heard about the Hellfire legacy, its eyes grew wide. The meat jelly shivered and nodded repeatedly. The League of Hellfire from the Fourth Mountain. How is it possible for them to appear here? Time passed slowly. Meng Hao's expression remained calm the entire time. Rumbling sounds were already detectable from outside of the Immortal's cave, the results of the unanticipated problems the parrot had mentioned. Meng Hao wasn't the type of person to lay blame on others. True, it had been the parrot's idea to lure all the people here. However, even though unexpected problems had cropped up outside, Meng Hao was still confident that they could be handled. This was the self-confidence of a cultivator. As long as there are no nascent soul cultivators, then all I have to do is put on the blood-colored mask, and I can take care of everything myself if I have to. This is a good opportunity to teach the parrot a bit of a lesson. Meng Hao's left hand flickered as he poured more medicinal plants into the pill furnace, along with a mouthful of violet qi. This qi was not core qi, which could give birth to divine abilities, but normal cultivation-based qi. The purpose of this action was to cause his alchemic flame to grow even stronger. A variety of complex thoughts filled his mind as he began to concoct the perfect gold core pill. Under normal circumstances, this pill would require quite a bit of time to concoct. However, Meng Hao was a grandmaster of the Tao of alchemy. Furthermore, he had his legacy flame and the spirit summoning incantation. Considering all of that, he was confident that he could reduce the concocting time by quite a bit. Time passed. 3 days later, the squawks of the parrot echoed out throughout the foggy wind. Explosions filled the air. The fog had already subsided by about half. The killing intent of the cultivators from the 3 great sects billowed to the heavens. They had been trapped for days now, and had constantly been sending power out from their cultivation bases. They were growing more exhausted, but their hatred for Meng Hao caused them to intensify their efforts. Of the hundreds of evil spirits, only about half remained. As for the more than 100 cultivators who ran about within the spell formation, many were coughing up blood and their bodies were stooped over. They did not seem to fear for their lives. Nonetheless, they slowly began to slip into unconsciousness. As more and more of them passed out, the forces of the 3 great sects grew nearer. Patriarch Bighead pulled out more rice, flinging it out into the air. Darkness filled the area, even the sky itself. There were no clouds. This darkness bore the appearance of a turbid magical river. The yellow springs appear. This is definitely the work of the League of Hellfire. The parrot laughed bitterly. Inside the fog, a light glittered as the meat jelly appeared. It flew through the air listlessly, looking dispirited. The 2 of them had used quite a variety of special defensive techniques throughout the past 3 days, but now they were running out of steam. "Damn it," said the parrot hatefully. "If I had just 1 more year to practice, or 500 cultivators, then the power of this trifling, incomplete legacy couldn't possibly break through Lord Fifth's celestial spell formation." Suddenly, an explosion could be heard from within the Immortal's cave. Meng Hao's eyes were bloodshot. He had used all the energy he could muster to concoct the perfect gold core pill. At the critical moment, the pill furnace began to shake. Strands of golden light began to emanate out from within, bathing the entire Immortal's cave with a golden glow. Meng Hao's hair was in disarray, his expression listless. And yet, determination still glowed within his bloodshot eyes. His alchemic flame burned as he continued to refine the pill, increasing its medical strength. At this moment, the sky in the outside world, which was dark and gloomy to begin with, suddenly filled with massive amounts of black clouds. The black clouds churned and seethed, covering an area 50 kilometers in diameter. The illusory visage of the yellow springs was concealed, and the gruesome darkness banished. However, the earth below only grew darker. Booming sounds filled the air as countless bolts of lightning writhed up above like silver snakes. This was not the heavenly tribulation of perfection. This was pill tribulation caused by a medicinal pill. However, if the pill was successfully concocted and Meng Hao consumed it, then the tribulation would change. Its explosiveness would increase exponentially, and it would transform into a horrifying, exterminating heavenly tribulation. Chapter 337, Perfect Gold Core Pill. When the pill tribulation appeared, Meng Hao sat with eyes shining as he stared at the furnace. It overflowed with golden light, illuminating the cave entirely. Gold light spilled out as Meng Hao sensed cracking sounds. Liquid gold within the furnace rapidly congealed, shrinking with each crack as if compressed. The pill tribulation appeared in the sky above. Unavoidable, Meng Hao took a deep breath and concentrated on the furnace. In the outside world, the tribulation clouds spread out in all directions. Lightning crackled and thunder boomed up to the heavens. Outside of Meng Hao's immortal's cave, wisps of white qi were rising up from the short mountain. They circulated together to form into the shape of a pill furnace that seemed to wish to fly up into the sky. The sight of it caused the late core formation patriarchs of the three great sects to stare mutely. However, it didn't take long for their expressions to fill with disbelief. That's pill tribulation. That's definitely the legendary pill tribulation. I've read about it in the ancient records. They say that when certain medicinal pills appear, or sometimes other precious materials, the heavens become angry and wish to exterminate the object. That damned cultivator is concocting pills. Who knew he could do that? And who would have imagined he could concoct a pill that would provoke pill tribulation? Greed appeared on the faces of the three patriarchs. The cultivators behind them didn't understand what the black clouds meant, so their eyes filled with confusion. Then, the booming of thunder began to grow more intense, and their faces filled with fear. It was at this moment that a huge tremor ran through the earth, as what remained of the more than 100 cultivators powering the spell formation all coughed up blood and then passed out. As they fell, the fog dissipated. The short mountain was now visible, as were the parrot and the meat jelly, floating in midair. They were currently looking up into the sky, odd expressions on their faces. When the fog fell, the remaining evil spirits began to scream, as if the lightning and thunder in the sky filled them with terror. Suddenly, a massive, thick lightning bolt began to descend down toward the earth. As it shot down, over 1,000 smaller lightning bolts merged together with it until it was nearly 1.5 meters wide. It shot directly toward the short mountain. The sight of it caused the patriarchs of the three great sects, along with the cultivators who surrounded them, to stare open-mouthed. However, just when everyone thought that the lightning bolt was about to smash into the mountain, it suddenly began to collapse for no apparent reason. As it did, it split into hundreds of smaller lightning bolts, which then screamed toward the trembling evil spirits. It seemed these evil spirits were also something that attracted the attention of the heavenly tribulation, causing it to split apart and seek to destroy them. That was the reason for the strange looks on the faces of the parrot and meat jelly. Actually, it was a lucky break that the pill tribulation appeared at the exact same moment that the spell formation fell apart. Explosions filled the air and the ground quaked. The hundreds of evil spirits screamed miserably as over half were instantly smashed into nothing. The other half began to slowly dissipate, intent on leaving. Not a single spark of lightning headed toward Meng Hao's pill furnace inside the immortal's cave. The golden glow shone up from the pill furnace, spreading out in all directions, piercing out through the immortal's cave, penetrating up through the mountain and the soil. Suddenly, a blinding golden light appeared outside of the short mountain. In addition, bands of golden light seeped up from within the earth. The evil spirits who had escaped the tribulation lightning and were dissipating, saw the golden light, and then began to scream and disappear with even greater haste. A fathomless golden light. It shot out from the center of the mountain, as if a sun were buried deep within. It seemed as if this sun wished to rise up out of hell and charge into battle with the heavens. The meat jelly and the parrot had long since flown off. However, the parrot felt bad for the cultivators who had formed the spell formation, so before leaving, it and the meat jelly carried them off to hide some distance away. Within the blink of an eye, the mountain was no longer visible. The only thing one could see was the boundless glowing light. The light pierced up into the clouds above, causing them to churn violently. The lightning danced back and forth, and a second bolt began to form. It shot down toward the center of the golden light, the short mountain which was the nexus of it all. It moved with incredible speed, and was soon almost directly on top of the mountain. However, even as that happened, a popping sound rang out within the immortal's cave. The lid flew off of the pill furnace, and an unprecedentedly bright golden light emanated out, eclipsing the light from before. Something that had the appearance of a sun flew out, emanating scorchingly hot rays of golden light. Meng Hao's immortal's cave seemed as if it would ignite, along with the entire mountain. What actually was, it began to melt. The stones, the restrictive spells, all the objects within, became ash in an instant. The only thing left behind was the piercing golden light which shone up into the heavens. The light was impossible to cover up as it shot upward to slam into the lightning bolt. When the light and the lightning bolt connected, a massive boom ripped out that violently shook heaven and earth. The immortal's cave was gone. Meng Hao sat there cross-legged, bathed in goldenness. The ground beneath him was beginning to melt. The black soil was transforming into golden liquid, which spread out everywhere to form a lake. A golden lake. At the very center of the lake was Meng Hao, his hair flying about, his violet core spinning inside of him, the strange mark on his forehead glittering. His clothes rippled wildly and his eyes shone with stubbornness. There in his right hand was a golden medicinal pill. It might be more correct to say that what he held was not a medicinal pill, but a blazing golden sun. This golden pill was the perfect gold core pill. The three great patriarchs and hundreds of other cultivators stood with pounding hearts. The instant they saw the pill, the Tao pillars of Foundation establishment cultivators trembled, as if aware the results would differ from any other. As for the core formation cultivators, especially the three patriarchs, their bodies trembled violently. They could sense intense hope emanating out from the cores within their bodies. It seemed as if their cores wanted to merge with this golden medicinal pill. It only took a moment for the three cultivators to suddenly understand. Were they able to consume this pill then? They would be able to tread an unprecedented path of cultivation. Only the three patriarchs could control themselves. The remaining hundreds of cultivators instantly went crazy and shot directly toward Meng Hao, intent on stealing the perfect gold core pill. However, even as they approached, the sound of thunder filled the air as three lightning bolts congealed. Meng Hao's hair whipped in the air as he used all the power he possessed to place the pill in his mouth and consume it. Here begins the great Tao of the gold core. This chapter was sponsored by Hong Lai, Dennis Liu, Nikita Believ, and Fernando Freitas. Chapter 338, Perfect Immortal Body. No. Meng Hao consuming the pill sent all the cultivators, even the patriarchs, into a frenzy. Their minds spun, they rushed madly toward him. Meng Hao calmly placed the pill in his mouth, his eyes shining. His hair whipped in the air as the heavenly tribulation rolled above. He sat straight and tall in the golden lake, filled with grace. The pill didn't dissolve but instantly slid down his abdomen. The descending lightning bolt stopped and exploded. Countless sparks of electricity showered out, forming a face. The face's eyes were closed, yet it seemed to see everything. It appeared to concentrate on Meng Hao. The face faded away, and the tribulation clouds in the sky seethed with unprecedented intensity. The clouds had been 50 kilometers in diameter, but now they grew with explosive speed. 250 kilometers, 500 kilometers, 1,500 kilometers. It only took a moment for them to cover a radius of 5,000 kilometers. For 5,000 kilometers in all directions, black clouds covered everything. Thunder boomed and lightning danced. Flashing light from the heavens seemed to be preparing to sunder the earth. A few hundred kilometers away from Meng Hao, in the field of rubble, the sound of ragged panting could be heard. The old man who was sealed there was observing the proceedings from within his black mist. No one could see him, but as he looked up, he could see the lightning, and it made him laugh. His laughter was hearty and filled with excitement and pleasure. A perfect immortal body, laughed the old man. One of the three great immortal bodies, the perfect immortal body. This kid will reach immortal ascension soon. Meanwhile, Meng Hao's body began to shake as the perfect gold core pill slid down into his abdomen. A fierce expression covered his face, and veins bulged out on his forehead. His body felt as if it were about to be violently ripped into pieces. The pain was indescribable. After forming his violet core, his pupils had taken on a violet hue, but now the violet was being replaced with gold. Within him, his violet core shook, and cracking sounds could be heard as fissures spread out across its surface. It seemed to be on the verge of breaking into pieces. At the same time, the hundreds of cultivators in the area began to descend upon him, their eyes burning red. They seemed to have lost their minds. The only thing that remained was frenzy and greed. Meng Hao had consumed the golden pill, so they wanted to consume him. It seemed the thought of even taking a single bite of his flesh was enough to drive them to infinite madness. However, even as they neared him, Meng Hao lifted his head up toward the sky and roared. The sound of the roar slammed into the approaching cultivators like a wave. Blood sprayed from their mouths as they tumbled backward. Even the patriarchs of the three great sects were sent spinning away, bodies shaking and blood shooting from their mouths. As they spun away, out of control, Meng Hao's violet core shattered. The pain caused by its disintegration caused Meng Hao's roar to become even more shocking. His pupils were now more than half gold, and a golden light filled his entire body. Inside of him, where his violet core used to exist, a gold core suddenly appeared, whereupon it instantly swept up the shattered remnants of the violet core. Massive amounts of golden light poured out from the gold core, spreading out through Meng Hao's chi passageways. His entire body was filled with the color of gold. The pain was instantly replaced with a rapturous feeling. His hair whipped about him as he felt power surging through his body. His heart began to pound. Every rotation of his cultivation base sent roaring booms in all directions. His skin was a bit pale, and a bit of a demonic air seemed to seep into his features. He was more handsome, his body taller and straighter. He was surrounded by golden light. Power. He felt something similar to what he had felt back near the rebirth cave when he reached core formation. Back then, the difference between foundation establishment and core formation had been clear. That was the same feeling he had now. His spiritual sense grew, his physical body became stronger, his bones tougher. Even his mental faculties were quicker than before. Everything about him changed, as if he were going through a massive transformation. This transformation equated to stepping foot onto a great Tao. The great Tao of the golden core. Meng Hao's eyes opened, and when they did, a dazzling golden glow shot out. Golden light shone through his green robe, making his entire person seem like some sort of celestial warrior. Off in the distance, the parrot and the meat jelly were cautiously observing. The parrot's eyes were wide and filled shock. It had been with Meng Hao for years, but most of that time had been spent in the copper mirror. Meng Hao actually had many secrets that it wasn't aware of. As for the meat jelly, it really had no idea about Meng Hao's true level. It only knew that he seemed relatively strong. Now, both of them watched as he underwent his transformation. "How bizarre," muttered the meat jelly. "It's a perfect immortal body. I never noticed it before." "Inhuman," said the parrot, sounding hurt. "What incredible good fortune. What amazing destiny. Only a sublime spirit de yin can have a perfect immortal body, and yet he actually does. Only big shots like Lord Fifth should have a perfect immortal body." 3 heavenly scriptures, sublime spirit, Tao divinity, heaven severing. Each scripture contains secrets of the heavenly mountains and seas. Using them, the 3 great immortal bodies can be cultivated. From ancient times until now, only a sublime spirit de yin and a Tao divinity de yin have appeared. A heaven-severing de yin has never been seen. This kid really has heaven-defying good fortune. A perfect immortal body. With a body like that, if he reaches immortal ascension, he could become a legacy apprentice of the sublime spirit de yin. De yins, truly powerful experts within the 9 mountains and seas, cultivators who can oppose the lords of the 9 mountains and seas. Sure, Lord Fifth doesn't care too much about them, but Lord Fifth is in a weak position now, damn it, so he has to rely on their help. The parrot was getting more and more animated. And then there's that damned legend, which is the reason I've met such calamity. According to the legend, if all 3 of those scriptures are collected and combined, they will form the mountain and sea scripture. That scripture. As it started to recall the terrifying mountain and sea scripture of legend, it seemed on the verge of going crazy. 1. The name of the mountain and sea scripture is exactly the same as the actual historical Chinese text entitled Classic of Mountains and Seas. As for Meng Hao, he took a deep breath as he felt his cultivation base rotating along with the gold core. Great waves of power washed through him, filling him with determination. "So is this the power of the perfect gold core?" he murmured, his eyes glowing with golden light. His entire person radiated dignity. He waved his right arm and power exploded out of his cultivation base. As it did, a vortex of golden wind sprang into being around him, sweeping across everything. The hundreds of cultivators stared in shock. The frenzy was still visible on their faces, but they couldn't stop themselves from backing up, pushed away by the invisible power of the golden wind generated by Meng Hao. In the blink of an eye, the golden wind swirling around Meng Hao had turned into a screaming cyclone. As it spun through the air, a face appeared within the wind, that of Meng Hao. "As of this moment," Meng Hao said coolly, "I no longer need to hold back my cultivation base. It is time to enter the mid-stage of the perfect gold core." The gold core within him began to spin rapidly, and cultivation base power surged up. As it grew stronger, the cyclone caused the hundreds of surrounding cultivators to be thrown backward. Astonishment filled their faces, especially the patriarchs of the 3 great sects, whose eyes shone with disbelief. It felt to them as if Meng Hao could crush them at any time. The cores inside of them were even beginning to show signs of instability. The same question was spinning in the minds of everyone. What pill did that guy just consume? It was at this moment that Meng Hao's cultivation base reached the pinnacle of its climb, and a great roaring filled his mind. It seemed like his cultivation base had reached a bottleneck, and that at any moment it would break through. The golden storm wind surrounded Meng Hao for a radius of 50 kilometers. He felt himself suddenly break through from the early gold core stage to the mid-gold core stage. He felt his body grow tougher and his spiritual sense stronger. The gold core fused with him, forming what seemed like a second soul. The gold core contained his memories, his soul, his life. It was as if his life force and very life itself existed inside of it. In fact, it actually felt like a seed. The seed of a great Tao. The instant he entered the mid-gold core stage, the golden glow around Meng Hao intensified until it seemed like a golden sun hovered above his head, shining out across the land, turning everything the color of gold. It's about time to form my core chi. I wonder what the essence of my core chi will be. He closed his eyes as the golden cyclone whipped around him. In his mind appeared images, from when he was small until now. The Tower of Tang, Yunji County, Mount Daqing, the Reliance Sect, the State of Zhao, the Southern Domain, the Violet Fate Sect, all the way to the events at the Rebirth Cave. Core Chi essence can be abstract or literal, he thought. Suddenly, he recalled the starry sky he had seen just before he met Chuman Tai. In that land, he had looked up and seen an ancient starry sky. Meng Hao also remembered that Jai Hongdong's core chi had taken the shape of a starry sky, except that was the starry sky of the Jai clan. The starry sky of ancient times, that is the essence of my core chi. He opened his eyes, and as he did, the golden sun exploded. Massive amounts of golden core chi expanded out. At the same time, the golden tempest around him suddenly shrank inward. In the blink of an eye, it melded into Meng Hao's body, causing the golden glow which bathed the surroundings to disappear. The only thing left was rolling gold core chi, which took the shape of a starscape. It was not a golden starscape, but a black one. However, within the blackness was a myriad of golden stars. Those stars were stars that few people could ever see, the starry sky of ancient times. The blindingly bright starscape which floated above Meng Hao's head immediately began to emanate an unprecedentedly shocking pressure. The surrounding hundreds of cultivators were shaken, especially the patriarchs of the three great sects. The instant they saw it, they gasped in astonishment. His core chi, its essence, is a starscape. The power of core chi is manifested by the grandness of its essence. What could possibly be more grand than the stars? From ancient times until now, only the truly chosen of heaven and earth have manifested core chi as a starscape. This guy. The three of them began panting, looks of fear on their faces as they slowly backed away. Chapter 339, Vengeance to be Had. Thunderous booms echoed from the 5,000-kilometer clouds. Lightning bolts danced within them. A terrifying aura appeared, one that wished to destroy all people in heaven and earth. Even if it meant destroying the land itself, everyone must die. Meng Hao looked up at the vast, churning tribulation clouds. No matter how strong, the heavens would destroy everything. An intense golden light shone in Meng Hao's eyes. There was something different about acquiring the perfect gold core than the time he had acquired the perfect foundation. A change had occurred within him, as if a great Tao had opened up in front of him. However, before anything else, he needed to transcend this heavenly tribulation. "Damn it, Lord Fifth is gonna risk it all," cried the parrot. "This master is different. I can't pull wool over his eyes. His luck can't match mine, but I haven't seen anyone better. You're the one, kid. Let's delay this heavenly tribulation." The parrot's eyes turned red as it shot forward, lifting its claws to tie a black band around its head, covering its right eye. As the parrot flew out, the lightning up above began to coalesce. The sheer amount of it vastly surpassed that from the pill tribulation. Furthermore, this lightning was red in color. Meng Hao's hair flew wildly around him, and his body shook violently. His eyes turned as crimson as if they had been ripped into pieces. The lake water beneath him boiled, rapidly transforming into myriad golden beads that slowly began to rise into the air. "Parrot," roared Meng Hao. At the same time, he began to use a technique the parrot had taught him to exercise control over his consciousness. In the blink of an eye, the golden light in his eyes vanished, as did all of the chi he was emanating. His body suddenly seemed to wither, and his expression grew dull. The parrot soared up into the air and let out a furious shout. "Deceive the heavens." Along with the shout, its body exploded with countless multicolored beams of light. The nearby cultivators trembled as wisps of chi began to emerge from the tops of their heads. The strands of chi floated up into the sky and merged together with the light to form a huge net. In the middle of its descent, the red lightning suddenly hesitated, as if it couldn't locate Meng Hao's aura. Ultimate vexation, get over and help B \*TCH, the parrot roared. The meat jelly hesitated for only a moment. Then, a pop could be heard as its body suddenly transformed into a million illusory phantoms that shot up into the air to form a second net. The tribulation clouds in the sky seethed, and more lightning bolts writhed about, apparently searching for Meng Hao's aura. Luckily you're asleep, heavens of Jai, cried the parrot arrogantly. Only a sliver of your will exists. Maybe I couldn't fool your true self, but you think I can't hoodwink a bit of your will. Lord Fifth is omniscient. All right, all I have to do is hold on for 3 days and this tribulation can be delayed for sure. As soon as the words were out of its mouth, the red lightning bolt descended. Being unable to find Meng Hao's aura, it shot toward the first large net. A boom could be heard as the illusory net shattered. The hundreds of cultivators surrounding Meng Hao spat up blood and then, with the exception of the 3 patriarchs, all of them, instantly exploded. The 3 patriarchs coughed up blood and their bodies shrank and withered. Inside, cracks spread out across their cores as if they might collapse at any moment. After a moment, their eyes grew clear and their faces filled with astonishment and fear. They retreated at top speed, scalps numb. The only thing they could think about was running away. Bitch, why don't you keep searching for the correct will, raged the parrot. Instead, you're just blowing random things up. You're cheating. Fine, so can Lord Fifth. I'll screw you to death. Tribulation schmibulation. Lord Fifth is gonna screw you to death. Ultimate vexation. Come help me be \TCH. Turn those clouds into my favorite Fluffy. It seemed to feel its dignity had been severely challenged. With a howl of rage, it bit down on one of its own multicolored feathers, then whipped its head about and threw it down. Eyes brimming with insanity, its body suddenly grew larger and larger, and it shot up into the sky. It flew at high speed directly into the tribulation clouds. At the same time, a beam of light shot out from the meat jelly net, seemingly a bit resentfully. It entered into the tribulation clouds and spread out through all of them. Suddenly, the clouds began to twist and distort. Meng Hao gaped open-mouthed as he saw the tribulation clouds begin to change shape. They changed into a gargantuan plump animal covered with white fur. The luxuriant furriness of this animal is difficult to describe. The fur draped off of the enormous creature which stretched out for thousands of kilometers in every direction, so large you couldn't see from one end to the other. As for the parrot, it gave an excited squawk as it dove into the fur. It emerged again in a moment, but showed no signs of being tired, instead diving enthusiastically back in from a different angle. This process repeated over and over again. As Meng Hao watched on, his mind went blank. He could never have possibly imagined that the tribulation clouds could be changed into this appearance. What had previously been a very solemn and momentous occasion had suddenly turned somewhat comical. Meng Hao shook his head. Suddenly, the furry tribulation cloud let out a massive boom. The countless lightning bolts dissipated in all directions. Within the cloud, the parrot was visible, its body dark but still stubbornly persisting. Fluffy, I'm gonna screw you to death. Wench, I'm definitely gonna screw you to death. The excited parrot didn't seem to want to stop. However, the masses of lightning in the area began to fall, accompanied by thunderous booms. They shot toward Meng Hao, seemingly without number, tens of thousands of them. Meng Hao's scalp went numb. The heavenly tribulation when he had acquired his perfect foundation had seemed solemn and imposing in its desire to destroy all living things. But this, the seemingly endless amount of lightning gave off an aura that made Meng Hao feel uneasy. It seemed that this tribulation sent against his perfect gold core had somehow changed, thanks to the interference of the parrot. As the lightning descended toward Meng Hao, the meat jelly net let out a disgruntled howl and moved to cover over Meng Hao. A massive boom sounded out, shaking the earth. The lightning slammed onto the meat jelly, causing Meng Hao to shake in trepidation. A blinding light filled his eyes that made it impossible to see anything around him. After a very long time, the lightning and thunder gradually faded away. Meng Hao looked back up to find that the massive ball of fur in the sky was gone. His eyes widened and he took a deep breath. Everything looked placid, but Meng Hao knew that such massive quantities of tribulation clouds couldn't possibly vanish like this. The sense of crisis he'd felt because of the heavenly tribulation had not departed. The pitch-black parrot fell to the ground with a flopping sound. It struggled to its feet and then slapped itself roughly on the chest. It was panting. Its expression was somewhat listless and its aura weak. However, its voice was as arrogant as ever as it said, "Is Lord Fifth badass or what? The heavenly tribulation has been delayed for you. Time to give your profound thanks. Without Lord Fifth, it wouldn't matter if you had ultimate vexation here. The heavenly tribulation would just keep going on forever until he was smashed to pieces. Don't get too excited, though. I went all out to delay the heavenly tribulation, but there's no way to tell for how long. You need to get a hold of your tribulation transcending life form as quickly as possible. All right, it's time for Lord Fifth to rest up. Don't be too moved. Oh, and don't forget to find some more furry, feathered creatures." With that, it fell flat onto its face. Its body transformed into gray ash which drifted away with the wind. However, along with the ash was a multicolored glow that flew into Meng Hao's bag of holding. Meng Hao's mind and heart shook. He quickly checked the copper mirror inside the bag of holding. The parrot loved to brag and wasn't very reliable, but Meng Hao would never forget how much it had helped him just now. Dispersing the tribulation clouds had seemed simple, but seeing the parrot in the state it had been just now, Meng Hao knew that it had paid a high price for its actions. "No need to check on it," said the meat jelly languidly. "Its body was tattered and listless. It's not going to die. After it rests for a few days it'll be fine. Poor me, always struck by lightning. I like eating it, but sometimes I just get so full." It transformed into a hat which settled onto Meng Hao's head. "You need to be careful," it continued, its voice growing weaker. "That wicked parrot and I once helped a young girl delay heavenly tribulation. Later she got pissed off and tried to kill us. She chased us for years and years, repaid kindness with enmity. I really hate people like that." Eventually it trailed off into a muffled murmur and then stopped talking. Meng Hao sat thinking. He looked around and waved his hand, causing more than 100 medicinal pills to fly out. They crumbled as they shot toward the unconscious cultivators the parrot and meat jelly had protected. After the medicine entered their bodies, the cultivators trembled and slowly opened their eyes. After coming to their senses, they appeared somewhat confused. It didn't take long for them to compose themselves and begin to look around. The mountain and everything around it was gone. The medicinal cistern was gone, and the buildings they had constructed were now nothing but crumbled ruins. The lake that had formed was also gone. Left behind was only a large crater. They looked at it all silently, bitterness filling their hearts. They had gone to a lot of trouble to seek safety in this place, to find somewhere to practice cultivation in a convenient fashion. But now, everything was gone. "The Immortal's Cave is gone," said Meng Hao, "but I can find you another one." The more than 100 cultivators lifted their heads up to look at him. "The medicinal cistern is gone, but I can make you a new one." This second sentence caused a bright glow to appear in their eyes. It seemed their resolve had been ignited. "If you are willing," said Meng Hao, his voice resonating loudly, "follow me. There is vengeance to be had. The time has come to kill." He flicked his sleeve and shot up into the air. Behind him followed the more than 100 cultivators, their eyes flashing with intense killing intent. These were Black Land's cultivators, and they understood what it meant to exact vengeance. Meng Hao's spiritual sense spread out to track down the fleeing patriarchs from the three great sects. This chapter was sponsored by Torsten Neumer, Salim Mudrik Baraba, Tomislav Fistrik, and Jacob Keaton. Chapter 340, One Aura, Three Bodies. Meng Hao led, followed by well over 100 cultivators whistling through the sky in formation, an imposing sight. Meng Hao clearly made out the three fleeing patriarchs with his spiritual sense. They'd chosen different directions, their speeds varying as they used secret techniques to go as fast as possible. "Three directions." Meng Hao gave a cold snort and extended his hand toward the ground. A buzzing sound could be heard. Only Meng Hao saw ghost images spring up everywhere, then vast quantities of demonic chi swirl and coalesce in front of him. In an instant it transformed into two figures, indistinct, blurry. Only the aura spreading out was visible. Everyone else saw nothing. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he waved his right hand, causing two blood clones to materialize in front of him. They moved forward to merge with the demonic chi, which was a shocking sight. This was a technique Meng Hao had come up with earlier. By merging a blood clone with demonic chi, it would make it both easier to control his etheric incarnation as well as simpler to recall it if necessary. The two blood clones' battle prowess was not equal to that of his true self, but the blood clone demonic chi combination could explode with incredible power. If the patriarchs of the three great sects were at the peak of their power, they could easily defeat these blood clones. However, Meng Hao could see that, With the exception of Patriarch Big Head, they had all sustained internal injuries as well as cultivation base reduction. Even more importantly, their minds had been shaken. Combine this with their lowered cultivation base, and they couldn't be in a weaker position. Meng Hao was confident that his incarnations could definitely exterminate them. Considering the level of his spiritual sense, he could definitely control both of these incarnations. If anything unexpected happened, there were other options he could employ to handle the situation. He sent his will into the two blood-clone demonic Qi incarnations, and then sent them shooting off in two different directions. He also split the more than 100 cultivators into 3 groups, 2 of whom he sent to follow the blood clones off into the distance. Then he raised his head and locked his spiritual sense onto the only of the 3 great sect patriarchs who had a bag of holding, Patriarch Big Head. Followed by around 50 cultivators, he headed directly in the man's direction. You followed me for days with murderous intent. You destroyed the spell formation of my immortal's cave. Do you really think I would let you get away with that? Meng Hao's eyes flashed with killing intent. These people had been courting death, and Meng Hao wouldn't be soft-hearted with them. Most importantly, they had seen something they shouldn't have. The consequences for them would be death. Filled with killing intent, Meng Hao shot along at top speed. Meanwhile, in another location, Patriarch Rubicon was zooming along, his face pale. Currently, he was only able to wield about 40 to 50% of the power of his cultivation base. Furthermore, his bag of holding was empty. He had no medicinal pills, no magical items, nothing which he could use to recover. A feeling of desolation rose up in his heart, which then transformed into intense regret. And yet, how could he ever have imagined that the situation would have turned out so opposite to expectations? I have to get out of here. I need to go into secluded meditation and cultivate. After my cultivation base is recovered, I'll recruit some more fellow Taoists to go kill that guy. His eyes radiated vicious hatred. All he had to do was spread the word about a man who could concoct golden medicinal pills, and there would be plenty of Black Lands cultivators willing to go after him. In fact, there may even be some nascent soul eccentrics. If that were the case, it wouldn't matter what superhuman powers the guy had, he would be dead without a doubt. Suddenly, the reflection of a bloody glow could be seen in the old man's eyes. His heart lurched, and an intense sensation of imminent crisis filled his mind and heart. He veered off to the side without hesitation. The instant he shifted his momentum, a bloody beam of light whistled past him at high speed. Ripples emanated out through the air as it passed, causing Patriarch Rubicon's face to flicker. His heart pounded. He knew that if he hadn't evaded at the right time just now, his head would have exploded. An intense, grim sound filled the air as the rippling passed the old man. As the sound emanated out, the red glow in the air exploded. Smash! The ripples transformed into an intense attack. Booms filled the air as the old man, even in the middle of dodging and retreating, coughed up a mouthful of blood. His face pale, he turned around. The first thing he saw was a blood-red figure. Its hair was red, its robe, even its skin. It approached slowly, and as it did, the old man could sense an invisible but powerful aura. It was bizarre, but as it emanated out, it transformed into an intense dread. He couldn't see this thing's cultivation base. The bloody phantom's eyes seemed to be completely blank, and even more strange, the closer the old man looked, the more he realized it was impossible to tell whether it had cultivated some heretical technique or was a puppet. "Who are you, Your Excellency?" said the old man, sounding frustrated. Were his cultivation base at the peak of its power, he wouldn't care, but at the moment he was seriously injured with an empty bag of holding. The circumstances couldn't be more inauspicious. The blood clone's eyes suddenly flickered and seemed to come to life. The look in its eyes suddenly resembled that of Meng Hao's. "Did you really forget me so quickly?" it said. "Didn't you say you would chase me to the ends of the earth to kill me?" Great waves of emotion suddenly flickered across Patriarch Rubicon's face. Without thinking about it, he backed up, his heart racing. It's him, but how could he be using a puppet like this? Is it a puppet or, could it be, an etheric incarnation? When his thoughts reached this point, his mind began to spin and the blood completely drained from his face. The technique to form etheric incarnations was not something core formation cultivators could master. It was a divine ability that only nascent soul cultivators could employ. As the old man began to flee, he suddenly heard the sound of running. A black mist appeared as the 50 or more cultivators arrived, running together according to the parrot's spell formation. Just who is this guy? Patriarch Rubicon's scalp went numb, and his eyes filled with despair and frenzy. Meanwhile, in another location and a different direction, Patriarch Pockmarks of the Han River sect was speaking similar words, his face filled with bitterness. He was surrounded by a red mist, outside of which were 50 cultivators running in formation. In front of him was a figure dressed in a red robe with indistinct facial features. The only thing he could make out were two blood-red eyes. The eyes seemed to contain no emotions at all. They were completely merciless. Patriarch Pockmark's face was pale. His cultivation base was actually the weakest of the three. He was of the late core formation stage, but his injuries were severe. Cracks covered his core, and he could only wield roughly 30% of his power. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Look, all of this is just a misunderstanding, sir." Suddenly, a boom filled the air and the entire area was covered in mist. Off in another direction, Meng Hao's face was calm as he shot through midair in a band of light. Up ahead of him, Patriarch Bighead's scalp was numb as he used everything he could muster to fly forward. Occasionally he would spit up some blood. Meng Hao wasn't sure what secret technique he was using, but it continued to rapidly boost his speed. Meng Hao followed, frowning. At the moment, he was pushing forward with all the speed he could muster, but was still unable to catch up. He could only maintain the current distance. Just what technique is he using to achieve such speed? Thought Meng Hao, his eyes flashing. He suddenly waved his right hand out and pointed with his index finger. Demon Sealing, 8th Hex. His finger descended, and ghost images sprang up everywhere as a bizarre power shot toward Patriarch Bighead. As it descended, the man's expression changed dramatically. However, just a moment later, to Meng Hao's shock, he spit up a mouthful of blood and used some method to seemingly unfetter his body and shoot forward in a flash. Meng Hao was visibly shocked. Patriarch Bighead's heart trembled. Damn it, this guy just recently broke into mid-core formation. He just cultivated core chi. How could he be so inhuman? And what technique was it that he just used? It forced me to use a forbidden legacy technique to get away. His escape had seemed nonchalant to Meng Hao, but in truth, the forbidden legacy technique was self-destructive. His injuries were now even worse. I can't keep doing this, he thought. At this rate, he won't even have to make a move. I'll eventually just die from my injuries. Grinding his teeth, he suddenly stopped in midair and slapped his bag of holding to produce a grain of pure white rice. He threw it out in front of him. Flashing incantations with both hands, he then pointed toward the grain of rice and said, "Luminous rice, transform into a heavenly army." His voice was accompanied by a roaring sound which echoed out. The grain of rice transformed into a raging torrent of blackness. Popping sounds filled the air as more than 100 evil spirits appeared. Patriarch Bighead's neck was purple, and his extremely large head was covered with cold sweat. His breathing was ragged as he utilized the technique. His injuries had apparently worsened even further. Blood sprayed from his mouth and his eyes filled with viciousness. At this point, he didn't hope to slay his opponent, but just to delay him. Unfortunately, as soon as the 100 or so evil spirits appeared and shot screaming toward Meng Hao calmly said, "Amateur." Suddenly, core chi exploded out above his head. The golden chi transformed into a starscape filled with golden, glowing stars. The light from the stars shot out toward the incoming evil spirits. A booming explosion echoed out. The evil spirits could do nothing to block Meng Hao. They dissipated along with miserable screams. Patriarch Bighead's face went pale as he continued to retreat. However, Meng Hao had already lifted up his hand. Mania poured from the eyes of Patriarch Bighead. Seemingly risking everything, he performed an incantation with his left hand, simultaneously slapping his bag of holding with the other hand to produce a magical item. His heart filled with bitterness, but he knew that he would have to risk it all in this battle in order to have even the slightest chance of making it out alive.